This guy is wearing B-rank guild armor that's supposed to be impenetrable. Yet, a shirtless level 2 player just cracked it open like a walnut. His opponents are confused. They're using A-rank skills and expensive gear, but they can't even touch him. They think he's cheating, and honestly, they aren't wrong. While everyone else is grinding normal stats, he unlocked martial power, a glitch in the system that makes his basic attacks hit harder than their ultimate moves. Look at this. When the boss monsters spawn, the pros run for their lives. But he runs straight at them. He isn't farming for gold. He's speedrunning the apocalypse. Because he knows something the system doesn't tell you. He knows that in a few years, these games stop being fun, and the real nightmare begins. A nightmare that looked exactly like this. The sky above Manhattan was a bruised purple bruise, a celestial hematoma signaling the end of days. The sky above Manhattan was a bruised purple bruise, a celestial hematoma signaling the end of days as the demotion prevention mission initiated under the suffocating weight of an apocalypse that had long since claimed the vibrancy of New York. 3 figures stood amidst the urban decay, their eyes cast upward in a mixture of awe and primal terror, watching as the fabric of reality tore open to birth a nightmare, the air itself vibrating with the hum of impending doom as the mission objective flashed before them: defense. The ground cracked, asphalt surrendering to the emergence of a jagged, dark spire that pierced the skyline, pulsing with malevolent red eyes that opened one by one to gaze upon the ants beneath it. This was not merely a beast but a calamity given form, the monster of the end, Behemoth, its massive claws tearing through skyscrapers as if they were made of wet paper, summoning storms of lightning that danced around its grotesque silhouette. Players on the ground trembled, their weapons shaking in hands that had lost all strength. For how could mere mortals stand against a creature whose very existence was a decree of planetary execution? The command was simple yet impossible: defeat Behemoth before it ends the world, a task that felt less like a mission and more like a cruel joke played by the system. The monster roared, a sound that shattered glass and resolve alike, forcing the party leader to scream orders to stay in formation, though his voice cracked with the knowledge that if they failed here, humanity's final chapter would be written in blood and silence. BattleNet had begun in 2010, a digital curse that bled into reality, evolving into the Space League by 2022 where humanity was forced to fight for survival against cosmic horrors, a brutal tournament that had whittled the globe down to a mere 10 remaining nations by 2023. Earth stood on the precipice of destruction, humanity's representatives losing ground with every passing second, and now, facing the Behemoth, the end seemed all but guaranteed. The monster gathered a sphere of void energy, a black hole of malice ready to erase the grid, but then, a streak of white light defied the darkness. A single man, Song Jihan, launched himself into the sky, a solitary figure against the backdrop of annihilation, his body wreathed in purple aura as he became a human missile aimed straight at the heart of despair. He did not hesitate, did not tremble, for in his eyes there was no fear, only the cold calculation of a predator taking down prey. This is where the nightmare ends. With a motion that blurred the line between martial art and miracle, he struck, a collision of forces that unleashed a blinding shockwave, tearing through the Behemoth's defenses and silencing its roar in an explosion of light that turned the night sky into noon. The dust settled over the ruins, leaving the other players gasping on the ground, unable to comprehend what their eyes had just witnessed, stuttering in disbelief that he had killed the Behemoth on his own. Song Jihan stood atop the disintegrating corpse of the Titan, a lone victor overlooking the city he had saved, the system proclaiming mission accomplished for Earth and the USA, though the glory felt hollow in the silence. Below him, the survivors looked up, wondering if this was the power of the martial saint, gazing upon the man ranked 7th in the world, affiliated with American First, yet standing so far apart from them. A blonde woman, the priestess Sophia, flew towards him with concern etched on her face, but she was intercepted by a wall of arrogance in the form of Baron Williams, the world's #1 player and guildmaster of American First. Baron looked at the corpse not with gratitude but with a critical, appraising eye, noting that the residual energy alone was enough to crush lesser beings, a testament to the monster's power and, by extension, the threat Jihan had neutralized single-handedly. Jihan stood amidst the dissipating evil energy, his left arm gone, replaced by a swirling mass of dark power that ate away at him, a sacrifice made for a victory that belonged to everyone but him. Sophia landed, horrified by the sight of his missing limb, her hands glowing with green light as she attempted to cast regeneration, panic rising in her voice as she saw the extent of his injury. Jihan flinched, the pain of the Behemoth's evil energy reacting violently to the healing magic, and he coldly ordered her to back away, his focus shifting to the golden treasure chest that had manifested in the rubble. "I don't need pity, I need what I earned." But before he could claim his due, Baron's voice cut through the air like a whip, commanding his guild members to look down at the boss's reward, his tone dripping with entitlement as he declared that he would name those who would receive the spoils. The sycophants cheered, chanting, "American first," like a mantra of exclusion, while Jihan watched in silence, the hero of the hour reduced to a spectator at his own coronation. Baron listed the names, assigning the loot to the priestess and others who had done nothing but cower, deliberately omitting the name of the man who had struck the killing blow. Sophia, unable to stomach the injustice, cried out, demanding to know why Jihan was being excluded when he was the one who had saved them all. Baron's expression hardened, his finger pointing at Jihan with the weight of a judge sentencing a criminal, his words cutting deeper than any claw. "Why? That's because he's not American." The cruelty of the statement hung in the air, stripping Jihan of his humanity and reducing him to a tool, a useful dog who, despite naturalization, would never be one of them. Jihan closed his eyes, accepting the verdict with a weary resignation that spoke of 1,000 prior betrayals, telling Sophia to let it go because he simply didn't care anymore. "I am a ghost in a country that sees me as a weapon, not a man." He walked away from the celebration, a refugee who had lost his motherland and found only servitude in his asylum, wandering through the wreckage of a city that owed him its existence yet refused him its respect. Sitting on the hood of a crushed taxi, he opened his status window, staring at the notification of an SSS rank skill obtained through fragments, the nameless divine arts, a power that required him to find its true name to fully awaken. He had climbed to 7th in the world rankings, fought tooth and nail to prove his worth, yet the stain of his origin was indelible in the eyes of those who ruled this broken world. But what harassed him more than the discrimination, more than the stolen rewards or the physical pain of his severed arm, was the crushing guilt of survival. Was the guilt that I survived alone. He sat in the shadows of the ruins, focusing on healing his arm with his own energy, waiting for the mission results to finalize, a solitary king in a kingdom of ash. The screen flashed, "Game End," announcing the results of the Bronze League demotion mission, categorizing the defense as a success based on survival rates, reducing the miracle he had performed to cold statistics in a game that was rigged from the start. End of days as the demotion prevention mission initiated under the suffocating weight of an apocalypse that had long since claimed the vibrancy of New York. The mission category flashed as defense, the clear conditions demanding the survival of more than half the players, a statistical impossibility in the face of the horrors that had emerged. The results cascaded down the screen like a digital death sentence, the blue boxes of success for the USA and China drowned out by the overwhelming red tide of failure that swept across Russia, Japan, and the rest of the globe. Humanity had lost the demotion prevention mission, a verdict that hung heavy in the air as the survivors on the ground stared up at the sky, their faces masks of despair. But the system was not done with its cruelty, flashing a new notification that dragged the remaining players into a final demotion decision battle against the orc species, a scenario that sent a ripple of shock through the American First Guild members standing amidst the ruins. Sophia, the priestess, gripped her staff, her voice trembling as she realized the gravity of facing orcs without their strongest fighter, instinctively calling out that they needed Song Jihan to survive this. "They cast me aside like trash, and now they beg for the weapon they broke." Baron Williams, however, remained blinded by his own hubris, his face twisting into a scowl as he vehemently rejected the idea, his ego refusing to share the stage with the man he just robbed. He declared they would go without him, summoning the representative players into the beam of light that transported them to the arena, leaving Jihan behind in the crumbling city. In the digital coliseum, the team materialized, Baron standing at the forefront, his eyes glowing with blue energy as he sneered at the massive orc leader, calling them disgusting pigs with a confidence born of ignorance. The orc, number 4772, loomed over them, a mountain of muscle and malice holding a massive axe. Baron glanced around, noting it was just his elite team and a Chinese ranker, and clenched his fist, reaffirming to himself that they didn't need the outcast to win. Baron powered up, his body erupting in a violent red aura as he screamed that he could do this alone, charging forward with the desperate need to prove his supremacy. He unleashed a storm of lightning, declaring himself the representative of humanity, but his attack was nothing more than a light breeze against the titan before him. The orc leader didn't even flinch, effortlessly dodging the strike with a speed that belied his size, his massive axe swinging down in a blur of motion that shattered Baron's defenses and his delusions in a single blow. Blood sprayed across the arena as the slaughter began, the Chinese ranker falling first, his body crushed underfoot as the system coldly announced the death of a humanity player. Panic seized the group, Sophia screaming in terror as her teammates were ripped apart like wet paper, the difference in power not just a gap but a chasm. The orc leader stood over the broken bodies, his red eyes glowing with mockery as he thanked the humans for being so weak, his axe descending one final time to silence the screams. Arrogance is a slow poison, but today it kills instantly. The screen faded to black, the game ending not with a bang but with the pathetic whimper of those who thought themselves gods. The verdict was final and absolute, the system declaring humanity worthless and sentencing the entire species to expulsion from the Space League, a polite euphemism for total erasure. There was no lower league to fall into, only the void, and as the notification flashed, the deletion began. In the ruins of New York, Song Jihan sat on the hood of a crushed taxi, watching calmly as his hand began to dissolve into purple data, the world around him unraveling at the seams. Buildings turned to dust, the sky cracked like a broken mirror, and the screams of billions were silenced as the planet itself was deleted from existence. So this is how it ends, not with a fight, but with a command line. The Earth shattered, exploding into a cloud of cosmic debris, leaving nothing behind but the cold indifference of space and a message confirming humanity's deletion was complete. But in the absolute darkness, a red warning box pulsed, an error detected in the perfect execution of the system's judgment. There were still humans remaining, or rather, one human who refused to fade. Song Jihan floated in the void, his body glowing with a white light as his nameless divine arts resisted the deletion code, a lone spark in an ocean of nothingness. He wondered if he was the only one alive again, the irony of his survival bitter on his tongue, realizing that if he had only known the true name of his skill, he might have saved them all. High above, unseen entities observed this anomaly, intrigued by the creature resisting their will, acknowledging his potential despite his weakness. Text boxes appeared in the void as the constellations debated his fate, noting that they could not overlook any possibilities. A vote was cast, the blue and red panels clashing in the darkness until a decision was reached. Player Song Jihan would be returned to the league's first entry era. The world spun, reality rewriting itself around him, and suddenly he was gasping for air, waking up in a sweat-soaked bed with a shout of confusion. He looked at his hands, solid and whole, the purple corruption gone, replaced by the trembling of a man who had just woken from a nightmare. He scanned the room, the modern furniture and the soft sunlight filtering through the curtains alien after years of apocalyptic ruin. He walked to the window, pulling back the drapes to reveal a bustling city, the skyscrapers intact, the streets filled with people living their lives in blissful ignorance of the doom that awaited them. A news report on the TV mentioned the Sword King Yoon Sejin, and outside, children played, mimicking the hero's moves. Jihan stared at the date, 2020, South Korea, and the realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. He was really back. He summoned his status window, seeing his name and level 2 staring back at him, confirming that he had returned to the very beginning, to the moment they first entered the league. A laugh bubbled up in his throat, not of madness but of sheer, unadulterated relief. Destiny thinks it can play games with me, but I know the cheat codes now. He looked at the family photo on the shelf, the faces of those he lost smiling back at him, and his expression hardened into a mask of steely determination. He realized that this was not just a second chance but a weapon, an opportunity to use the information from his past life to rewrite history. He clenched his fist, the strength of his resolve far outweighing his low level, vowing that he must change the future. He turned away from the window, his eyes burning with a fire that would consume the league, declaring that he would protect everyone this time. It would be different, not because of hope, but because he had seen the end of this game, and he refused to let it happen again. The year was 2020, a time that felt like a lifetime ago, filled with the naive roar of crowds and the vibrant energy of a world that didn't yet know it was doomed. The memories flooded back, images of a packed stadium, the cheers of thousands echoing for a match between Korea and China, a time when the nation still held its head high in the East Asian League. It was a golden age, or so it seemed, anchored by a single man whose power was absolute. Yoon Sae-jin, the Sword King, a warrior ranked third in the world, his dual blades glowing with the violet aura of a man who touched the realm of the divine. The footage played in Jihan's mind, a montage of dominance where steel met flesh and monsters fell like wheat before a scythe. He was Korea's pride, a national treasure whose mere existence guaranteed safety and status. But history is written by betrayals, and this was the moment the ink turned to blood. Shifted to a press conference, the Sword King standing in a sharp suit, his expression calm, his words a guillotine falling on the neck of a nation. He announced his naturalization to Japan, taking the name Ito Ryuhei, a decision that wasn't just a transfer of citizenship but a death sentence for his homeland. Jihan sat on his bed, watching the broadcast on his TV, the annoyance rising in his chest like bile. I still get annoyed whenever I see that face. The news anchors wore expressions of professional panic, analyzing the catastrophic drop in rankings that would follow, the loss of their greatest deterrent leaving the country exposed. It was the beginning of the end, a slide into the abyss where Korea fell from grace, plummeting into the lower ranks at a speed that terrified the experts. Jihan turned off the TV, the black screen reflecting a face that had seen too much. The nation had ruined itself with mental victories, clinging to past glories while the world moved on, and no one talented enough to replace the traitor ever appeared. Battle.net was not a game, it was a slaughterhouse where death in the server meant a stopped heart in the real world. 2 years from now, the Space League would turn the tutorial into a war for survival, and the lower-ranking nations would be fed to the wolves. Monsters appeared in the cities, towering nightmares that turned skyscrapers into tombstones, starting one-sided massacres that wiped countries off the map. The survivors all whispered the same regret, a mantra of futility: if only the Sword King had stayed. Jihan stood before a framed photo on his wall, the glass reflecting the face of the man who abandoned them. Yoon Sae Jin was that kind of player, selfish and absolute, but he was also something else. Jihan's fist clenched, trembling with a mixture of rage and grief, before he drove it into the frame. The glass shattered, a spiderweb of cracks obliterating the Sword King's smile. As to why my older sister loved this fucking bastard, the fragments fell, leaving only the image of a woman and a child, the family he couldn't save, the ghosts that haunted his regression. If she were still alive, perhaps the world wouldn't have burned. But ifs were for those who couldn't change the future, and Jihan was done with hypotheticals. He turned away from the ruin of the photo, the chapter of his past closing as chapter 2 began. He walked to the window, looking out at the city that was still standing, the massive sword statue gleaming in the sunlight, a monument to a hero who was already gone. He pulled up his status window, the blue holographic light illuminating his disappointment. Level 2, Bronze League, Gangnam Area 1. His stats were a pathetic row of 5s, the numbers mocking him. It's good that I came back at such an opportune time, but my stats are just way too awful. He rubbed his head, remembering the pathetic existence he led in this era, a life of alcohol and gambling, wasting away while the world prepared for the end. I was so dumb. His eyes drifted to the gift section, expecting nothing, but finding the Wanderer's Eye, an F-rank ability that let him analyze other players. In his past life, he had used this divine tool for nothing more than winning bets on matches, a waste of potential that made him scoff at his own stupidity. I didn't realize how amazing this little guy was, but then, a memory surfaced through the haze of the past, a drunken night where he stumbled upon a bottle glowing with gold liquid. The experience potion. Some idiot had drunk it while wasted and leveled up. I remember now, that idiot was him. He recalled the sensation, the warmth of the liquid, the drunken praise he heaped on the bottle before passing out. He shook his head, clearing the cobwebs, and looked back at the system window. Something was wrong. The achievement points counter sat at a staggering 100,000. His eyes widened. What the heck? Why the hell is this so high? Achievement points were the currency of legends, hard-earned and rare, yet here he was, a level 2 nobody sitting on a fortune. Putting aside the fact that points were usually useless for a low level, the sheer volume was an anomaly. Did something change when I went back in time? He reached out, his finger hovering over the inventory tab. The screen expanded, and his heart skipped a beat. Sitting in the grid was a card glowing with a chaotic, prismatic light. The achievement point exchange voucher, rank X. The description was a revelation, a special privilege given to the last survivor, who chose to retry. A special item, is it for only me? The realization hit him like a physical blow. This wasn't just a regression, it was a reward. He used the voucher, the system announcing the addition of the achievement shop to his window. That's insane, he muttered, a grin tugging at the corner of his mouth. The shop opened, listing upgrades that cost a fortune. Shop upgrade, status window expansion, extra class slot. He hesitated. Upgrading the shop was a gamble. He needed power now, not potential. But the gambler in him, the part of his soul that thrived on risk, took over. Let's try upgrading the shop. He tapped the button. Level 2 unlocked inventory expansion. Not enough. That's not it. One more time. Level 3 unlocked an extra title slot. Still useless. His points were draining, down to 50,000. The next upgrade cost 40,000. Does it get more expensive the higher the level? He had one shot left. What's there to worry about? You have to go as far as you can. He pressed the button. The shop hit level 4, and a new item appeared, emergency recovery. Jihan stared at it, his breath catching in his throat. Emergency recovery. This is, the description was simple but world-altering, can restore a broken item. He covered his face with his hand, a laugh bubbling up from his chest. This is bad, this is exactly why I can't stop gambling. It was a success. A massive, destiny-altering success. He walked to the high-tech gaming pod in the corner, the machine recognizing his biometrics. Recognition complete. Family, the word stung, but he ignored it. The machine still recognizes me as family, even though he left us. He sat in the chair, the familiar hum of the Battle.net connector enveloping him. Asterisk good. The preparations are complete. Asterisk he opened his inventory, his eyes locking onto the prize he had been aiming for all along. A broken, useless artifact that no one else would look at twice. Dongfang Shua's broken brush, rank A. I'll be able to easily obtain my first key. He selected the emergency recovery item, the blue light of the system clashing with the ancient aura of the brush. Restoring Dongfang Shua's broken brush, the light intensified, the shattered wood knitting itself back together, the bristles glowing with a celestial blue energy. A jewel embedded in the handle flashed red, and the item transformed. Dongfang Shua's brush, rank SS, the brush of the one who lived for 180,000 years, creating a connection to the martial god. Jihan held the SS rank artifact, the power humming against his skin. Good, the tutorial was about to begin, and for the first time, the game was rigged in his favor. The air in the gaming pod was thick with the silence of a timeline reset, the kind of heavy stillness that only exists before history begins to repeat itself. The countdown timer bled a digital red, ticking away the final seconds of a preparation phase that would define Song Jihan's second life. 10 seconds. That was all he had. His hand moved with the desperate precision of a man rewriting his own destiny, the digital brush in his grip slashing across the holographic interface. He wasn't just assigning points, he was breaking the game. Strength, agility, vitality, the holy trinity of physical stats, were being dragged together, forced to merge under the sheer force of his will and the ancient power of Dongfang Shua's brush. I don't have that much time, the system screamed in protest, sparks of blue electricity dancing around the window as the unique stat began to take form. This was the gamble, the chaotic synthesis that had once made him the martial saint in a future that no longer existed. The clock was a guillotine blade falling in slow motion. 7, 6. The brush strokes were violent, tearing through the digital fabric. A unique stat, a rare trait that defied the logic of the system, was being born from the fusion of 3, 5, 4. The characters for martial and power coalesced, glowing with a golden hue that outshone the mundane blue of the interface. Thanks to this brush that everyone ignored because it was broken, these two characters that I write with this small brush, 3. The light exploded, consuming the screen, consuming him. Will be the start of my awakening, 2. The energy stabilized, the kanji 4 force burning into the slot where separate stats once stood. 1, 0. The world dissolved into a tunnel of light as the system acknowledged the impossible. Player Sung Jihan enters the BattleNet League. The transition was instantaneous, the quiet hum of the pod replaced by the roar of wind and the distant clamor of violence. He stood in the center of a coliseum, the digital sky stretching endlessly above him, the air thick with the scent of ozone and impending death. The system prompt hung in the air like a decree from the gods. The tutorial mission is survival. Survive the monsters of the Colosseum and the other 100 players. Eliminate opponents until 50 players remain. Simple instructions for a complex slaughter. Chaos erupted instantly, avatars clashing in a riot of steel and magic, but Jihan stood calm amidst the storm. He looked at his hands, feeling the flow of power that shouldn't exist at level 2. He pulled up his status window, his heart pounding a rhythm of anticipation. Asterisk wait, what happened to martial power? Status, asterisk the window materialized, and there it was. Name, Sung Jihan. Level, 2, Affiliation, Bronze League, Gangnam Area 1. And right below it, the anomaly that made him a god among insects. Martial power, 5, magic power, 5, and used stat points, -1. A deficit that didn't matter because the conversion was a success. It worked. Relief washed over him, followed immediately by a surge of triumph. I have martial power, the system chimed again, sweet music to his ears. You've cleared the achievement. You've earned 10,000 achievement points. He dismissed the window, his gaze drifting to the brush in his hand. It's nice to see you again, he thought, a faint smile touching his lips. But then, a sensation pricked at him, a raw, unfiltered feedback from the environment. He wasn't wearing a connector suit. In this era, pain in the game was real, dulled only by expensive haptic suits that he couldn't afford. This brings up old memories. He looked down at his simple tank top and sweatpants, the uniform of the destitute. A world where you use money to reduce the pain you experience. He recalled the high-end machines used by the elites, by traders like Yoon Sae Jin, machines that reduced pain by 99%. Jihan stood exposed, every hit he would take destined to hurt, but pain was a teacher he knew well. I'll make the most of that later. He looked up, scanning the arena. Players were summoning weapons, casting spells, their forms glowing with the arrogance of the ignorant. Another notification blocked his view. A limited quest has been added. Finish first place in the tutorial. Reward, 1,000 achievement points. Jihan's eyes narrowed. Asterisk a limited quest. There was nothing like this before. Asterisk the timeline was changing, reacting to his anomaly. Finishing first wasn't just an option, it was now a mandate. A grin spread across his face, predatory and sharp. This is going to be a piece of cake since I have martial power. The game officially started. Survive until the game ends. Then why don't I mo? His thought was cut short by a shadow looming over him. A massive sword swung down, aimed at his skull. Die, newbie, a player shouted, eager for an easy kill. The blade descended with lethal intent, a strike that would have cleaved a normal level 2 player in half. But Jihan didn't flinch. He didn't dodge. He simply raised his hand. The sound of steel hitting flesh never came. Instead, there was a dull thud as his palm caught the blade, stopping it dead in its tracks. The attacker froze, his eyes bulging in disbelief. As expected, Jihan thought, his grip tightening on the steel. The most fun thing you can do in a game. The metal groaned under his fingers, spiderwebs of crack spreading along the blade. Is smurf on new players. With a casual flick of his wrist, he shattered the weapon, the shockwave sending the attacker flying back. Thanks for the first kill, Jihan whispered, his eyes glowing with a terrifying blue light. Meanwhile, in the stands of the corporate world, the gears of industry were turning. Massive guilds like the Twin Star Guild, LK, and Turtle were scouting, looking for the next big star to monetize in the BattleNet craze. Gangnam Area 1 was their hunting ground, the debut stage for their nurtured prospects. Back on the sand, a young man named Du Hyaku stood trembling, trying to shake off the nerves. Asterisk no, let's not get nervous. I'll do well. I'm the luckiest man alive. Asterisk he was a prospect for the Twin Star Guild, chosen for his A-rank gift, Agile. It was a game-breaking ability that increased agility by 25 and ignored the stat limit of the league. I can do it. He clenched his fist, feeling the superiority that came with being a chosen one. With this, I'll be able to get into at least the top 50s. He drew his sword, a sleek, expensive-looking blade provided by his sponsors. Hyaku scanned the battlefield, looking for prey. He saw a pigman monster crushing a player, a chaotic melee that he wisely decided to avoid. Let's not try to fight those guys for now. His eyes darted around until they landed on a lone figure standing still amidst the carnage. A man in sweatpants and a tank top, unarmed, looking lost. Did he get summoned wrong? Hyaku sneered. Asterisk he joined the Gangnam League like that. Sweatpants and a tank top, he's obviously a noob who got summoned wrong. Asterisk. It was the logic of a bully, finding the weakest target to validate his own strength. Then, that means, he gripped his sword, his knuckles white. A free kill, he launched himself forward, his A-rank agility propelling him across the sand like a bullet. Asterisk how lucky am I to get a free kill like this. Asterisk he closed the distance in a heartbeat, his sword swinging in a lethal arc. I don't know who you are, but thank you very much, he yelled, already tasting victory. The blade sliced through the air, aimed perfectly at the neck of the unsuspecting noob. But reality has a way of humbling the arrogant. There was no spray of blood, no digital disintegration, just a sharp clang. Hyaku's momentum halted instantly, the shock traveling up his arms. He looked down, his brain refusing to process what he saw. That noob had caught his sword. Not with a shield, not with a weapon, but with 2 fingers. What? Hyaku's eyes widened in horror. Asterisk what the hell is this? He blocked my sword with 2 fingers. Asterisk. Panic set in, cold and sharp. Asterisk how? Against Agile A's speed? Asterisk Jihan looked at him, his expression bored, unimpressed. With a flick of his wrist that was almost insulting in its casualness, Jihan twisted the blade. Hyaku felt the world spin as he was launched into the air, his A-rank gift useless against raw, absolute power. He slammed into the ground, the breath knocked out of him. Yuak, he gasped, looking up at the monster standing over him. Jihan looked down, his voice dripping with disdain. You're incredibly confident. You joined Gangnam with a gift like that? Hyaku's indignity flared even through the pain. What? You're calling my Agile A gift like that? He screamed, tears pricking his eyes. Do you think A-rank gifts are shit, you bastard? But as he looked into Jihan's eyes, he realized the terrifying truth. To this man, they were. Do you think A-rank gifts are shit, you bastard? The scream tore from Du Hyaku's throat, a desperate, high-pitched plea for validation that cracked under the weight of his own insecurity. His face was twisted into a mask of ugly fury, sweat mingling with the grime of the Colosseum as his ego fractured in real time. To have his blade, swung with the full force of an elite prospect, caught by bare fingers was a humiliation that his worldview simply could not process. Jihan stood before him, an impassive statue of calm amidst the storm of the young prospect's rage, his expression unreadable and cold. I won't deny that, Jihan replied, his voice carrying the chilling weight of absolute truth. a verdict delivered by a judge who had seen the end of the world. The admission hit Hayaku harder than any physical blow could have. "Yuck. You son of a bitch," he howled, his mind snapping as the indignity washed over him. "This bastard dares to make fun of me." The thought raced through his head, a frantic loop of denial and rage. He gritted his teeth, his grip on the sword trembling not with fear, but with the explosive, uncontrolled potential of his gift. "Don't get cocky just because you blocked me once," he spat, his eyes burning with a manic intensity that promised violence. "In that case," he hissed, crouching low as his leg muscles coiled like springs, "I'll hit you with my fastest attack." Blue lightning began to crackle around Hayaku, the visual manifestation of his agile gift pushing his body beyond its limits, the air around him humming with the stress of the accumulated energy. He launched himself forward, a blur of motion that defied the laws of physics for a level 2 player, leaving a trail of afterimages in his wake. "He's thinking of going all out," Jihan realized, his eyes tracking the blur with a detached precision. Calmness settled over him, a stark, terrifying contrast to the frenetic energy of his opponent. To be honest, his speed from before wasn't nothing either, Jihan admitted to himself, the analytical part of his mind dissecting the threat even as death rushed towards him at breakneck speed. "At the very least, I'm sure that this guy is faster than me." The realization wasn't born of fear, but of cold, hard fact, a recognition of the raw statistical gap that defined this early stage of the game. The blade came whistling in, a crescent of death aimed at his vitals, moving with a velocity that should have been impossible to evade. The Colosseum floor became a dance of death, the sand kicking up in spurts as Hayaku became a storm of steel. Asterisk swish. Swish, asterisk. The attacks were relentless, a barrage meant to overwhelm, to cut, to kill, leaving no room for breath or thought. Jihan was on the back foot, weaving, ducking, his movements economical but strained, the wind of the blade grazing his skin. "As I thought, my body is too slow," he critiqued, feeling the jarring lag between his mind's command and his body's response. "It's not easy to get used to falling straight to level 2, the discrepancy was a physical weight. His mind held the reflexes of a martial saint, but his limbs were heavy, burdened by the low stats of a beginner. Another slash tore past his face, close enough to sever a lock of hair, a reminder of how thin the line was between survival and the void. Rather than him being faster, "I'm too slow," Jihan corrected his assessment, his eyes narrowing as he focused on the rhythm of the violence. "This definitely won't be easy." A smile, faint and dangerous, tugged at the corner of Jihan's mouth, a predator recognizing the weakness of its prey. "If it was me from the past," he thought, briefly recalling the clumsy, terrified novice he once was, the man who would have died 10 times over by now. But now, after having experienced so many fights, the trajectory is too simple and honest. To the untrained eye, Hayaku was a whirlwind of unpredictable speed. To Jihan, he was a telegraph, every muscle twitch, every shift in weight broadcasting his intent before the blade even moved. Jihan stepped sideways, the sword passing harmlessly through the space he had occupied a microsecond prior. I can see his movements. The realization was the turning point, the moment the hunter became the hunted. Hayaku swung wide, overcommitting in his desperation to land a hit, leaving his center exposed. Jihan didn't hesitate. He stepped into the guard, his movement fluid, bypassing the lethal arc of the sword with a ghost-like grace. His hand shot out, striking with the precision of a surgeon and the force of a pile driver. The impact was dull, heavy, a sickening thud that echoed in the silence of the arena. Hayaku's eyes widened, the pupils contracting to pinpoints as the breath was driven from his lungs in a violent rush. "Hwa ah!" The cry was strangled, a gasp of shock and pain as the world tilted on its axis. Hayaku stumbled back, his momentum shattered, his brain unable to process how the prey had suddenly become the predator. Asterisk huh? What? Asterisk confusion reigned in his mind, a chaotic swirl of disbelief. Jihan didn't give him time to recover. With a fluid motion, he snatched a sword from the ground, or perhaps he wrested it from Hayaku's weakening grip, and in a blur of motion that mirrored his opponent's earlier speed, he struck. The blade went home. A wet, sickening sound echoed as steel pierced digital flesh. Hayaku gasped, blood, or its red pixelated equivalent, spurting from his mouth. "Kook," he choked, looking down at the steel protruding from his chest, his mind reeling. Impossible," he stammered, his knees giving way as the strength drained from his legs. He collapsed to the sand, the light fading from his eyes as his avatar began to glitch, dissolving into blue cubes of data. I'll definitely win the next time we meet. Don't you forget it," he screamed, a final act of defiance from a man who couldn't accept his loss, his voice fading into the digital wind. Jihan watched him fade, his expression unreadable. To be able to think about next time while dying, he mused, a dark amusement coloring his thoughts. What a good world, the system chimed, confirming the victory. You have obtained the first kill in the tutorial. Obtained 100 achievement points. As Hyaku vanished completely, the sword in Jihan's hand began to crumble, turning into dust as the system reclaimed its assets. Asterisk when the player dies, their weapons disappear with them. Unfortunate, asterisk Jihan tossed the hilt aside, dusting off his hands as he surveyed the battlefield. The arena was still a chaotic mess of combat, but he had carved out a small island of silence. Since I'm warmed up, let's increase the pace, he decided, his gaze sweeping the battlefield with cold calculation. To get first place, I need to get at least 5 or more kills. His eyes landed on a distant commotion, a chaotic brawl that most players were avoiding. Asterisk as expected. No one's even looking at where the monsters are. Asterisk. In the distance, a horde of pig-headed monstrosities, the Urks, roared and stomped, their axes gleaming under the artificial sun. Inside BattleNet, other than players, there also exists monsters. Jihan recalled the basic mechanics that govern this world. Asterisk but since one monster only counts as 0.1 kills, you need 10 for it to register 1 kill. So, most players avoid them and aim for other players. Asterisk it was a simple equation of efficiency that dictated the flow of the tutorial, a rule that everyone followed. Everyone except him. A blue window materialized before him, shattering the norm. A new quest has been created. This group that numbers in the 30s are the strongest monster group within the Colosseum. Annihilate them and show the difference in strength. Reward, 500 achievement points. Jihan stared at the screen, doing the mental math instantly. Asterisk new quest. Even when considering monster hunting's inefficiency, with a reward like this, 500 points, isn't that 5 times the first kill bonus? Asterisk a predatory grin spread across his face, the smile of a man who had just found a shortcut to power. If it's like this, there's no reason to not do it. He turned towards the horde, his posture relaxed, almost casual, as if he were walking to a convenience store rather than a slaughter. In the end, monsters are still just monsters, he thought, cracking his neck. Compared to real Urks, this is nothing. He remembered the terrifying legions from the future, beasts that could tear tanks apart like wet paper. These tutorial mobs were pale imitations, mere toys for his amusement. Well then, his eyes narrowed, focusing on the chaotic mass of muscle and tusks. Let's play. He leaped from the stands, landing with a heavy thud in the center of the monster pit, the impact sending a cloud of dust billowing outwards. The Urks paused, their beady red eyes locking onto the intruder. A naked human is approaching us, one roared in their guttural tongue, confused by the audacity. Human. Crazy, another bellowed. Kill. Human. The mob mentality took over, and they charged, a wall of green flesh and rusty iron intent on crushing him flat. Jihan didn't flinch. He ran straight at them. An axe swung down, massive enough to cleave a boulder. Jihan sidestepped it with the grace of a dancer, the wind of the swing ruffling his hair. The trajectory is too simple and honest, he critiqued again, weaving through the forest of blades as if he had rehearsed this dance 1,000 times. He moved like water, flowing around the clumsy attacks. He grabbed the handle of a descending axe, using the Urk's own strength to pivot. Axes, he thought, feeling the weight of the weapon as he wrenched it free, are thrown like this. With a torque of his hips, he hurled the weapon, sending it spinning into the skull of another monster. Blood sprayed, pixels scattered. Kook! Impossible. The Urk gurgled, collapsing. The system updated, eliminated. Jihan didn't stop. He was a whirlwind of violence, picking up dropped weapons, using them until they shattered, then moving to the next. Kill him. The Urks roared, fear beginning to seep into their rage. They swarmed him, trying to bury him under sheer numbers, but it was like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. Jihan was a blur, dual-wielding stolen axes, spinning, slashing. Asterisk swish. Thud. Asterisk bodies piled up. He broke an axe handle over an Urk's head with a sickening crunch. How pathetic, he scoffed internally, looking at the stunned creature. Who told you to shout while performing a sneak attack? The Urk stared at his broken weapon, then at Jihan, confusion clouding its primitive mind. Human weapon broke. Your weapon also broke. We'll kill now, the creature gleefully announced, raising its own axe, thinking the tide had turned. Jihan looked at the splintered wood in his hand, then at the monster, unimpressed. Use a better weapon, dude, he sighed. All these weapons are lacking oomph and don't befit your size. As the Urk swung, Jihan stepped in, delivering a punch that shattered the remaining wood and the Urk's jaw in one motion. Yuwu! The impact sent a shockwave through the mob, clearing a circle around him. Standing amidst the carnage, Jihan spotted a sword lying in the dust, likely dropped by a careless player earlier. Let's see. He picked it up, testing its weight. He pulled up his status window again. He had 1 point to spend. Asterisk if I were to raise just one, it has to be martial power. Asterisk he tapped the interface. The unique stat, the amalgamation of strength, agility, and vitality, glowed with potential. Asterisk a unique stat that combines strength, agility, and vitality into one. Even at the same value as other stats, this broken stat is at least twice as powerful. Asterisk he watched the number tick up from 5 to 6. Asterisk but most importantly, there's another reason why martial power is special to me. Once martial power hits 30, Nameless Divine Arts rank, SSS opens up. Asterisk. It was the key to his past power, the foundation of the martial god. I need to get Nameless Divine Arts as soon as possible. Suddenly, a notification blinked. Your level has increased. Jihan froze. Asterisk, but this stat has a fatal disadvantage. Martial power doesn't go up just by pressing the button. Huh. It went up. Asterisk he stared at the screen, baffled. Asterisk a level up in the middle of a game. Normally, EXP's calculated once the game is over. Normally, you have to gain a bunch of combat experience and go through a lot of training to raise martial power. Asterisk he clenched his fist, feeling the surge of energy coursing through him. Putting in points is just to raise the growth cap. Ain't this great? A dangerous smile played on his lips. I don't know what's going on, but if it keeps going up like this. Swish, a sharp sound cut through his thoughts. An arrow. Jihan tilted his head, the projectile whizzing past his ear with mere millimeters to spare. An arrow? He turned to see two figures approaching. A woman with a bow, her posture relaxed but ready, and a large man clad in heavy plate armor, holding a tower shield. You dodged, the man grunted, his voice echoing from within his helmet. Lucky bastard, the woman smirked, knocking another arrow. There's not much time left, so let's finish this up quick. She glanced at her partner. Yes, let's. Like we agreed on before, the kill goes to the person who lands the last hit. Yes. Jihan analyzed them instantly. Asterisk looks like they teamed up. This happens every now and then. The original purpose of the survival map is one-on-ones, but there's no restriction saying that participants can't work together. Asterisk his eyes zeroed in on the emblem on the man's shoulder. Asterisk and judging by that logo, they're from one of Korea's top 10 guilds, Turtle Guild. A warrior and an archer, a close-range and long-range combo. If they're from the same guild, the rest needs no saying. Asterisk the system announced. 60 survivors left. The tutorial will soon end. Jihan raised an eyebrow. Asterisk so many people died already. That means you could survive just by dodging now, but since they went out of their way to target me, I guess I seemed like an easy target. Asterisk. The armored man stepped forward, banging his sword against his shield in a show of intimidation. You know, if you would join me for a meal afterwards, I'd be willing to let you have the kill, he leered, his voice dripping with arrogance. The woman rolled her eyes. Geez no thanks stupid bastards. Jihan pulled up the leaderboard. Asterisk 1 ST, Sung Jihan, 4 kills. Second, I'm Gaeong, 3 kills. Asterisk that barely puts me in 1 ST place, he noted. His grip tightened on the borrowed sword. Asterisk this is actually good. I can use this to hammer in my ranking. Asterisk he looked at the approaching tank. How shameless of you, considering the age gap. The archer paused, sensing a shift in the air, a sudden spike in danger that pricked at her instincts. Jihan didn't wait. He swung the sword, testing the new strength flowing through his veins. I'll test it here, the air screamed as the blade cut through it, vibrating with raw power. How strong a martial power of 6 is. He launched himself at the tank, the distance vanishing in a heartbeat. The tank raised his shield, confident in his gear. Asterisk A as expected of a Turtle Guild exclusive rank B armor. It really is sturdy. Asterisk the man grinned behind his visor, expecting the attack to bounce off harmlessly. A shabby weapon like yours won't be able to pierce through I dash. Crack. The sound was like a gunshot, loud and terrifying. Jihan's sword connected with the shield. Sparks flew, but they were eclipsed by the shockwave of pure kinetic force. The sturdy rank B shield didn't just dent, it shattered into fragments. The force traveled through the shield, into the armor, and into the man beneath. Gag! The tank screamed, his confidence evaporating along with his defense. The metal crumpled like tin foil under a hydraulic press. UF, he flew back, crashing into the sand, his body convulsing from the impact. Why you crazy asshole, he shrieked, staring at the monster in the tank top who had just dismantled his defense with a single strike. Jihan stood over him, the broken sword in his hand, a testament to a power that defied the logic of the tutorial. This was no longer a game. This was an execution. In the cool, blue-lit sanctity of a high-tech viewing room, the chaos of the Colosseum felt a world away. Lee Hae-yeon, the executive manager of the Twin Star Guild's PR Division 3, sipped her coffee, the porcelain cup clinking softly against the saucer. Whoa, this is rather surprising, isn't it? She mused, her eyes fixed on the screen, a flicker of genuine interest breaking through her professional veneer. It's truly a relief, huh? She added, a small, knowing smile playing on her lips. What do you mean? A deep voice asked, the confusion evident. Hye-yeon glanced at the man beside her, then back to the screen where the carnage was still replaying in her mind. Well, she began, her gaze drifting to the dark-haired woman sitting quietly in the corner. It's a relief that person wasn't summoned right next to you, of course. The camera shifted to focus on the woman in the corner, Im Gaeong, Twin Star Guild's prized prospect and Lee Hae-in's bodyguard. Her expression was steely, her eyes sharp, but there was a tension in her posture that hadn't been there before. You could have been eliminated, much less hold on to your second-place ranking, Hye-yeon stated, the brutal truth delivered with a casual air. The holographic leaderboard shimmered into view, confirming the reality. *1 St, Sung Ji-han, 6 kills. Second, I'm Gaeong, 4 kills, the gap was small in numbers, but massive in implication. If you end up getting matched with that guy in the next match, I guess you should avoid him. Hye-yeon advised, her tone shifting to one of strategic caution. Gaeong's fist clenched, the leather of her glove creaking under the pressure. Gosh, this kid, Hye-yeon thought, noticing the flash of defiance in her bodyguard's eyes. Gaeong looked up, a smile that didn't reach her eyes plastered on her face. Forget it. There's no way our Jaeong would lose, Hye-yeon quickly corrected herself, sensing the pride at stake. Just stomp him to the ground, but the bravado was thin. It's fine, miss. I'll avoid him, Gaeong replied, her voice tight. Hae-in's expression hardened instantly. No, this is a command. Fight him to gain intel, she ordered, the executive taking over. If you say it like that, understood, Gaeong acquiesced, standing up and walking away, her heels clicking rhythmically on the floor. As she left, Hae-in's gaze lingered on the screen, on the close-up of Sung Ji-han's eyes. Like I've seen him before, she whispered, a sense of déjà vu prickling at the back of her mind. Sung Ji-han shifted to the digital reconstruction of the fight. Im Gaeong, a blur of motion, her sword a streak of crimson light, slicing through opponents with the grace of a dancer. Swish. / she was fast, lethal, a true prospect. The S voice, internal and analytical, broke down her profile. Known to possess an S-rank gift, she was a prospect the Twin Star Guild ambitiously rolled out, Gaeong's blade connected, pixels scattering like cherry blossoms. She lived up to everyone's expectations at the league and didn't fall short in taking first place, the leaderboard flashed again. Or, she wouldn't have if not for the appearance of Sung Ji-han. In another room, the scout team from the Turtle Guild was in an uproar. Does this make any sense? A man in a suit yelled, clutching a tablet as if he wanted to snap it in half. He's first place despite being level 2, unaffiliated, and having absolutely no proper equipment. Behind him, the guild's armored players looked sheepish. So, when can we go eat? One mumbled. Please shut up, another hissed. The scout ignored them, his mind racing. He got 6 kills in ragged clothes and sweatpants. That's basically no different from being unarmed. Is that really possible for someone at level 2? The image on the screen showed Ji-han standing alone in the center of the arena, a king in a wasteland of corpses. Just who are you? The scout demanded of the screen. Chapter 5, the title card faded, replaced by the towering skyline of Gangnam, the sun gleaming off the glass of a luxury high-rise. Inside, Sung Ji-han sat on a plush sofa, the picture of relaxation. Ding! A blue system window appeared. You have achieved first place in the tutorial. Ji-han smiled, a satisfied, predatory grin. Your EXP gains increase by 50% as a reward. You have leveled up 3 times. LVL 3-LVL 6, he leaned back, crossing his legs. Leveling up is fast, as expected from being low level, he noted. Another notification popped up. GP isn't rewarded in the tutorial. Ji-han waved it away. First, I should invest all 3 points into martial power. His finger tapped the holographic interface. Martial power has increased. 6-9 *. Next, the title I got from the league results. A new window shimmered into existence. Bronze title. All stats +1. EXP plus 20%. Effects only apply within the Bronze League. The title only applies in Bronze, but it's still quite nice, Ji-han thought, analyzing the benefits. If all my stats increased by 1 from the title. He checked his status window. Name, Sung Ji-han. Level, 6, martial power, 10, nice, he murmured. With 10 points in martial power, the Bronze League will be a breeze. His confidence was absolute, built on the foundation of a past life suffering. Silver promotion start at level 25. I just need to focus on getting stronger like I am now. Suddenly, his eyes sharpened. Flash, a new prompt appeared. That's right. I still have my class acquisition left. The screen displayed the text. You can obtain your basic at level 5. Jihan stared at the 4 glowing avatars representing the archetypes: warrior, mage, archer, support. It's an important moment for players without a class, the narration intoned. There are 4 options: warrior, archer, mage, and support. Jihan's gaze drifted to the warrior, clad in plate armor, sword in hand. I picked warrior in my previous life, he recalled. I've experienced it once before, so I'll be able to progress much easier if I select it again. But, he paused, a memory surfacing. I gained the achievement shop with my regression. The golden interface of the shop appeared in his mind. Asterisk achievement shop LV4. Extra class slot LV1, 10000P, asterisk. Thanks to this, I can add the warrior class whenever I want, he realized, a plan forming. Even if I select a different class. Just costs 10,000 points. Isn't this incredible? A sly smile spread across his face. With this, there's no real need for me to select warrior first. How fortunate, his finger hovered over the interface. Then the class I'll choose this time is, this one, he tapped. The screen went black for a split second, then exploded with white text. You have selected the support class. Immediately, a frantic warning box overlaid the selection. Asterisk, warning. Class does not match well with the player. Are you sure you want to select the support class? Asterisk. Jihan didn't flinch. There's only one reason I'm selecting support first, he thought, his eyes narrowing with determination. Despite even the system going out of its way to warn me of how unfitting it is, he pressed confirm. You have completed your class acquisition. Asterisk name, Sung Jihan. Class, support, asterisk. You unlock the divine power stat once you select the support class, Jihan explained to himself, the image of a priestess praying under a holy light filling his mind. It's a key component that must be developed to unlock a new, unique stat. However, the stat is rather troublesome to raise, and it's difficult to increase through training like other stats. The visual shifted to a monk struggling to lift a barbell, sweating profusely while the priestess looked on with pity. There's pretty much no method other than investing remaining points, but, Jihan crossed his arms, the corners of his mouth twitching upwards. I can't waste those precious and used points. I know of another method. A surefire method that people don't know well. His grip tightened on a steel pipe he had found. Welcome to Gangnam area. Bronze League. Your mission is defense. The new map loaded. A fortress under a red, apocalyptic sky. Fighting will continue until 5 towers remain. Jihan stood atop a stone tower, the wind whipping his hair. Below him, a sea of zombies groaned and clawed at the walls. Gra, Kia, Ka. The sounds of the undead were deafening. Protect the crystal and survive the zombies' onslaught. Jihan looked down at the chaos, unfazed. On the tower next to him, Im Geong stood ready, her sword drawn. Nearby, an archer from the LK Guild and a mage with expensive-looking robes assessed the situation. The mage looked at Jihan, scanning him with a skill. Flash, blue light enveloped them. Ah, of all maps, it's this one, the mage complained. Oh, defense, the archer replied. The people I'll have to do the mission with this time. The mage sneered, looking at the archer. The archer has B-rank equipment and is affiliated with LK, and the mage doesn't seem to be affiliated anywhere but has great equipment. Not bad, then, his gaze fell on Jihan. However, Jihan stood in his tracksuit, holding a rusty pipe. The most important thing in this map is, flash, a beam of light shot down from the sky, illuminating Jihan. The support, the words hung over his head, a digital label that seemed to mock him. Sung Jihan, the mage gasped. What? It's a defense. What? You're a support. The mage's face twisted into a mask of incredulity and rage. Wow, fuck. This is driving me crazy, he screamed, tearing at his hair. This is why I wasn't going to participate in the tutorial season. Ha 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 ha. He pointed a trembling finger at Jihan. Take a look at his clothes and the state of his equipment. Are you a fucking beggar? The mage stepped closer, his voice rising to a hysterical pitch. Do you think I bought this expensive equipment to carry fucking losers like you? Jihan stared at him, impassive. The mage turned to the others. You guys take care of it on your own. I won't participate. Im Geong closed her eyes, annoyed. How noisy. I had to get matched with a troll like him. This mission will be a little hard. Suddenly, the mage choked. What? Jihan's hand had shot out, grabbing the mage by the collar of his expensive robe. Release me, the mage sputtered, dangling in the air. Jihan walked to the edge of the tower, holding the struggling mage over the abyss of zombies. Im Geong's eyes widened. I said release me, you fucker, the mage screamed, kicking his legs futilely. Jihan looked him in the eye, his expression serene. As you wish, he said simply. Whoosh, he let go. The mage's eyes bulged as gravity took hold. He plummeted, his expensive robes flapping uselessly. He fell straight into the waiting maw of the horde. Karararrar, kragru. The zombies looked up, red eyes glowing with hunger. Groa, Kur, Kia. The horde descended on the fresh meat. Goo. The mage screamed as teeth tore into digital flesh. Flash. The blue light of death flickered in the pit. Jihan watched him disappear, then turned back to the stunned archer and Im Gaeong. What do you mean, what? He asked, adjusting his tracksuit. Don't play, the archer trembled, his face pale. Im Gaeong looked at Jihan with a mixture of fear and awe. Jihan hefted his pipe onto his shoulder, his eyes cold and commanding. I'll do fine without you. The statement was a fact, a promise of violence that transcended the game. This was the martial god, and he had no patience for dead weight. Wait, the command cut through the tension, accompanied by a hand raised in a gesture of absolute authority. Sung Jihan stood over the prostrate form of the mage, his expression unreadable, a mask of cold indifference. On the ground, the mage who had just been decimated was now on his knees, his forehead pressed against the stone in a display of pathetic submission. I'm going to try harder, he stammered, his voice trembling with the fear of a man staring into the abyss of elimination. Haven't you already killed me enough? Kim Gyu-hyuk screamed, his face contorted with a mix of terror and indignation, sweat beading on his brow as he looked up at the monster in the tracksuit. The system had been clear. In this Bronze League defense game, each player was granted 3 lives. But for Kim Gyu-hyuk, the math was terrifyingly simple. After being slaughtered by Sung Jihan in the initial skirmish, he had immediately revived, burning through his second chance. Now, standing in the digital afterglow of his own death, he realized the precariousness of his existence. After his second death, he had only 1 life left. The red silhouette of his avatar flickered in his mind, a grim omen. If he died once more, it was game over. And for a man who had already failed to ascend to the Silver League 4 times, falling from the grace of a top 10 guild to the status of a washed-up troublemaker, elimination here meant more than just a loss. It meant the end of his career. I'm going to do my best from now on, he yelled, the desperation clawing at his throat. He stood up, dusting off his robes, his mind racing with calculations. He would end up last. The thought was a poison. I must avoid finishing last, he told himself, the panic rising. If I finish last, my level will decrease because of the penalty, and the skill I've spent so much to buy will disappear. The stakes were personal, financial, existential. He looked at Jihan, who was watching him with the bored curiosity of a predator playing with its food. Didn't your attitude change too fast? Jihan asked, leaning casually on his steel pipe. Why, try to use a skill again like before. The mage didn't hesitate. Stay away from me, he shrieked, spinning around to face the encroaching horde of undead scaling the walls. Fire, 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 he chanted, unleashing a torrent of flames that engulfed the climbing zombies. The heat washed over the ramparts, a momentary victory against the rot. Jihan nodded, seemingly impressed. You used fire quite well. Kim Gyu-hyuk turned back, a manic grin plastered on his face, sweat dripping down his cheek. Why, yes. It's fire, he panted, eager to prove his worth. The fire mage is the most useful in maps like this. He pointed his staff at the burning corpses falling from the wall. That's me. On top of that, I'm level 15. You aren't planning to lose the most valuable force now, right? Im Gaeong watched the exchange, her hand resting on the hilt of her sword. Oof. She sighed, the recognition finally clicking. I thought I'd seen him before. So it's Kim Gyu-hyuk? She recalled the rumors, the fallen mage from a top guild who had become a notorious troll. Jihan looked at the mage, then at the leaderboard in his mind. A piece of trash, he concluded. But he had a use for trash. But, I have a condition, Jihan announced, pointing a finger at the sweating mage. Apologize for throwing me. The mage blinked, confused, but the archer beside him cheered. Whoa, this is great, the archer shouted, oblivious to the undercurrent of violence. Let's do our best from now on. Kim Gyu-hyuk forced a smile, but internally, he was seething. You fucker, he thought, his eyes narrowing. You just wait. Next time I'll. His internal monologue was cut short as a hand clamped onto his collar. He gasped, the world tilting dangerously. Jihan had grabbed him again. You want me to apologize? Jihan asked, a cruel smile playing on his lips. The mage floated over the edge of the wall, suspended over the abyss. Wait, he stammered, realizing too late that his usefulness had expired. Hey, Jihan said simply, releasing his grip. The mage plummeted, his expensive robes fluttering like broken wings. Kya, the scream faded as he hit the ground below, instantly swarmed by the undead. A blue system window popped up, cold and final. Mage class, Kim Gyu-hyuk has died. Jihan watched him disappear, then turned to the stunned party members. Go, he ordered. Im Gaeong looked at him with disdain. Next time, have some manners, she scolded, though fear lingered in her eyes. The archer stared at the spot where the mage had fallen. He killed him for real. The chapter title flashed, Chapter 6, below, the zombies surged. Gur, KRR. The sounds of the horde grew louder. Fire, the archer yelled, loosing an arrow. An explosion of flame erupted below, as expected of a fire mage. What an impressive destructive power, the archer cried out, clinging to the hope that the dead mage was still contributing. If we keep going like this, we won't finish last. We should stand back and cook some marshmallows. Then the realization hit. Oof, that's why we needed a mage. They turned to Jihan, the blame evident. What are you going to do now? You should have just forgiven him. We're all going to be negatively affected because of your pride. Jihan ignored them, his attention focused on a blue holographic window that had appeared before him. Status window, a new quest had triggered. Asterisk finish first in the 10 towers. Reward, 1000 achievement points. Asterisk simple enough. But then, another window overlapped it. There's a chain quest. Jihan's eyes widened slightly. Chain quest. Asterisk zombies source, 1. Eliminate 1000 zombies, alone. Reward, 3000 achievement points. Asterisk Jihan crouched on the battlements, staring at the text. Hunt 1000 alone. He mused, this is a quest that's impossible because of the time. The sheer volume of enemies versus the clock made it absurd. But still, the reward is too great to ignore. Im Gaeong watched him, her irritation growing. This is the worst, she thought. Leaving aside that he did whatever he wanted, to think he'd become a support with those specs. Even players just trying to have fun aren't like that. He isn't someone worth scouting for twin star. Hey, say something. Are you ignoring me? The archer yelled, breaking Jihan's concentration. If you're going to keep acting like that, why not just fight alone? Jihan froze. The words hung in the air, a sarcastic suggestion that aligned perfectly with his impossible quest. Exclamation point, Jihan turned, a look of genuine surprise on his face. Huh, can I really do that? The archer blinked. Yes, Jihan stood up, a plan forming. Maybe I could complete the quest if I monopolize the zombies. Im Gaeong stepped forward, drawing her blade. I'll be in the front. Mr. Support, stay at the back, she commanded, resigning herself to carrying the team. It's a game that's already been ruined, but as a player, I must take. Jihan's hand reached out, stopping her. It's okay, he said calmly. She looked at him, confused. What? Jihan rolled up his sleeve, his grip on the steel pipe tightening. I said it's okay. I'll face them, he declared. So MS Warrior, protect Mr. Archer. Huh, the archer gasped. Suddenly, a massive, dark hand slammed onto the ramparts. Wait, Im Gaeong cried out. A monstrous figure pulled itself up, red eyes glowing with malice, its body a shifting mass of crimson liquid. Kurr, the beast groaned. It was a blood zombie, an elite enemy made entirely of viscous fluid. That's a blood zombie, the archer screamed. It's different from ordinary zombies. Im Gaeong braced herself. Their entire body is made of liquid, so you won't be able to kill it with physical attacks. Jihan didn't listen. He leaped into the air, his steel pipe raised high. You need the opposite, he shouted. The pipe slammed down, not with the dull thud of metal on flesh, but with a blinding flash of white light. Boom! The impact sent shockwaves through the liquid monster. Im Gaeong shielded her eyes. You need the opposite, echoed in her mind as she saw the energy radiating from the weapon. White holy fire, she whispered, realizing what she was seeing. Is it divine power? Jihan landed, the pipe glowing with a brilliant, purifying aura. Below him, the horde snarled, a sea of rotting faces. He looked down, a smirk touching his lips. People will think that I was the one picking a fight, he murmured. Without hesitation, he vaulted over the wall, diving straight into the mass of undead. Slash, the pipe cut through the air, leaving trails of white light that incinerated the zombies on contact. Limbs flew, heads exploded, and the invincible blood zombie was torn apart by the holy energy. Im Gaeong watched from the wall, stunned into silence. The support was tearing through the enemy lines with the ferocity of a berserker and the grace of a grandmaster. I don't know if I'll be able to do it, Jihan thought, his pipe spinning in his hands as he decimated another wave. But let's try it. He landed amidst the chaos, the blue quest counter ticking upward in his vision. Asterisk eliminated zombies, 6/1000. Asterisk this wasn't just a defense anymore. It was an extermination. The title card burned against the darkness, signaling the return of the martial god who regressed to level 2. With a deafening swoosh, Sung Jihan swung his weapon, the steel pipe leaving a trail of cerulean light as it carved through the air. His eyes were focused, intense, locking onto the undead target before him. The impact was visceral, a sickening crunch echoing as the pipe connected with rotting flesh, sending shockwaves through the creature's body. The chain quest counter ticked upward in his peripheral vision, climbing from 12 to 13 kills, but the numbers were moving too slowly. He smashed another skull, the blue system window confirming the kill, yet the horde of blood zombies seemed endless. They swarmed over the ramparts, their red skin glistening, screaming as Jihan unleashed a flurry of strikes. Physical attacks won't work on these blood zombies, Jihan realized, dodging a clumsy swipe from a hulking monstrosity. Only when I see these zombies do I release my divine power, bit by bit. He tightened his grip, white energy swirling around his hands and the pipe, concentrating the holy fire. He wasn't just swinging blindly, he was charging up, preparing to unleash a devastating wave and take them down all at once, he decided, swinging the pipe in a wide, luminous arc. The energy exploded outward, a blinding white flash that engulfed the ramparts. Whoa, amazing, the archer cried out, shielding his eyes from the brilliance. Im Gaeong watched in stunned silence, her eyes tracking the precise movements of the man in the tracksuit. That support, he's insane, the archer yelled, cheering him on. If he's a master of that level, then who cares if he's a bit rough? You've got to respect it. You're doing great. Good job. Im Gaeong, however, saw something deeper. Sweat beaded on the archer's brow, but her focus was absolute. He's fighting by freely controlling his divine power and not wasting a single bit, she analyzed, her warrior's instinct screaming that this was impossible. That kind of control doesn't even make sense. Her eyes widened as a realization struck her, a sense of déjà vu washing over her. And most importantly, that person, the whole time. She watched as Jihan moved with fluid grace, his pipe glowing with lethal intent. He's been precisely aiming only for the head. Jihan landed softly, the corpse of a zombie thudding to the ground next to his sneakers. A blue system window appeared, validating his strategy. Asterisk, you have met the conditions. You've completely understood the other world's relic. Asterisk, the energy flared around him, and another notification chimed. Asterisk, your divine power has increased. 6-7, asterisk. A smirk played on Jihan's lips. I know a different method of raising one's divine power, he thought, satisfied. Nice. And it's a very surefire method. Chapter 7 began with a history lesson etched in the stars. The image of a golden crown, a scale, and an hourglass floated in the void. Relic, the narration began. A holy object. In 2010, when the Earth tutorial first began, it was traded at a high price, with the promise that it would contain some hidden secret. The artifacts glittered with potential, symbols of power from another dimension. But after 10 years, the secret was not found, and eventually its value kept dropping. The hourglass cracked, sand spilling out like wasted time. And the other world's relic, in particular, had no merit, so there were countless people who didn't know of its existence. The image shifted to faceless gray figures standing around a glowing artifact, ignorant of its true purpose. However, I raised my divine power using the other world's relic, Jihan's internal voice revealed. Shifted to a bright gymnasium, where a blonde woman tied her hair back, sweat glistening on her skin. America First Rank 3, Saintess Sophia, the caption introduced her. Jihan, in his past life, looked at her with confusion. I'm talking about my divine power. I was able to increase it thanks to the other world's relic, she explained casually, gesturing to the destroyed training dummies around them. Though you can no longer do it once the tutorial ends, Jihan was skeptical. Was that really possible? He asked. Of course, Sophia beamed, looking at him with amusement. How else would I have become a saintess? She clasped her hands around a glowing, ornate cross. If you clutch the other world's relic for a long time and pray, you can raise your divine power, she demonstrated, the holy light illuminating her face. Of course, the conditions for each relic are slightly different. Jihan grabbed his own head in frustration, the irony bitter. To think that everyone was unaware of such an easy method, he lamented. Sophia shrugged, her expression sympathetic. It can't be helped. Even if someone was to have heard a rumor, because the supply of the other world's relics are so limited, it would have been hard to even find it. Well, on top of that, it was only possible during the tutorial period, she pointed a finger at him. Thanks to that, you were able to keep the relic all to yourself. Yup. Jihan agreed, but then a thought struck him. Now that I think of it, I don't think so. He looked at Sophia, his gaze sharp. That was exclusive information that no one knew of. The memory darkened as he recalled another detail. There was one other person who consistently kept buying the other world's relic. The face of a man appeared in his mind, dark hair and sharp eyes. And one other player who knew of this. Transition to a dimly lit room, the Sword Palace penthouse. Jihan stood in the doorway, staring at a collection of items scattered on the floor. A golden scale, a chalice, an hourglass. This is, he gasped, sweat running down his face. They're all the other world's relics, their divine power has all already been absorbed, so the majority of them are all empty. He looked at the inactive Holy Grail, the crucifix, the pendant. The identity of the other player who collected these other world's relics was, another saintess that I know. His gaze drifted to a framed photograph on the wall. A family portrait. A smiling woman holding a baby, standing next to a man. My sister, he whispered. Sung Jia. My sister, along with Yoon Sae Jin, was the best supporter representing Korea, and a sort of heroine. He recalled, the image of her in white and blue robes, radiating light, filling his mind. The fact that she died is something long of the past. He reached into the pile of discarded relics, but among the other world's relics that my sister left behind, I found that metal pole. He held up the long, gray cylinder. A green system window popped up. Asterisk metal pole. Item rank, E, the other world's relic. If you strike the heads of the heretics, your divine power will increase. Asterisk. Jihan gripped the pole, realizing the absurdity of it. And just like I'm supposed to use it, he thought, swinging the weapon in the present day, it's still sturdy as always and perfect for hitting things. The metal pole, now rank F, smashed into another zombie. Though its rank has gone down and it has no more divine power left to absorb. He looked down at the chaos below. Warrior. That tower's already fallen as well, the archer shouted, pointing to a crumbling structure in the distance where a massive red crystal pulsed. A rank 5 elite zombie roared, queek. Suddenly, a flash of pink energy cut through the battlefield. Petals of light scattered in the air as a blade sliced through the elite zombie. The hell? Jihan watched as a figure in red and gold armor landed gracefully. I thought there was something familiar about her. He focused on the woman wielding the blade, plum blossom sword, he recognized. Im Gaeong, she stood tall, her expression serious. She was a player that was a good prospect for becoming the Sword King. It didn't end well. Since she died to the hands of Yoon Sae Jin, no Ryuhei. Jihan looked at her, seeing a reflection of the tragedy that befell his sister. By chance, it looks like I'll end up saving the plum blossom sword. He stepped forward. Support, he called out. Im Gaeong turned, surprised. Exclamation point, she blinked. May we join the battle? She asked, her pride as a warrior evident. If we fight, I think we can aim for a higher rank. Jihan ignored the request and opened his status window. Asterisk 398 kills. Rank 5, asterisk the chain quest required 1000 kills, we're way off, he muttered. Time left 01:28.67, and there's not much time left either. He looked at Im Gaeong and the archer. If it's the plum blossom sword, then even without me she'll be able to do more than hang on, he calculated. I'll give it a try I suppose. He channeled his energy, white lightning crackling around the pipe. I'll leave the top to you, he told them, turning his back to the safety of the wall. Without hesitation, he vaulted over the edge, diving headfirst toward the swarm of thousands of zombies below. Gather everything that I have, he thought, the air rushing past him. The blue aura around the pipe intensified, becoming a beacon of destruction, and exploded. He slammed into the ground, a vertical beam of white energy erupting from the impact point, disintegrating the undead in a massive radius. Okay, the sound effect echoed as the shockwave cleared the area. The thunderous impact of steel against rotten flesh echoed through the clearing as Sung Jihan delivered the final blow, his body wreathed in the fading remnants of cerulean energy. The force of the strike sent the zombie crashing into the stone ramparts, its body disintegrating into pixels as the system registered the kill. Silence descended upon the battlefield, a heavy, exhausted silence that was broken only by the ragged breathing of the survivors. The blue system window materialized in the air, its cold text confirming the end of the struggle. Limited quest, first among the 10 towers has been completed. Jihan leaned against his metal pole, his chest heaving, sweat dripping from his chin to stain the collar of his tracksuit. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the adrenaline recede, replaced by a wave of bone-deep fatigue. As I thought, Jihan mused, his internal voice heavy with a mix of satisfaction and critique. It was too much for now. He opened his eyes to look at the chain quest counter hovering in his peripheral vision. Asterisk kill 1000 zombies by yourself. 560/1000. Asterisk the numbers mocked him, a testament to the sheer impossibility of the task at his current level. Even with his regressed knowledge and superior combat instincts, the sheer volume of the undead horde had been overwhelming. The game has ended, the system announced, the blue light engulfing his feet as the teleportation sequence initiated. Mr. Support, you were amazing. Thanks for everything. The archer's voice cut through the magical hum, filled with genuine awe and gratitude. Jihan looked up to see the young man waving enthusiastically, his face beaming with the joy of survival. Behind him, the stoic figure of the warrior stood silently, her cape fluttering in the wind of the dissolving instants. Thanks for the carry. You're the best, the archer continued, his praise effusive. Jihan offered a small, tired nod. I'll challenge this again later when I get a bit stronger, he decided, watching the fortress walls fade into white light. Though, I don't know if the same quest will appear. As the world began to blur, footsteps approached him. The warrior woman, clad in her crimson and gold guild uniform, stepped forward with purpose. Her eyes, sharp and intelligent, locked onto Jihan's face. She was Gaeong, the plum blossom sword, a future legend in the making, but right now, she was just a player stunned by what she had witnessed. Let's meet up as teammates again in the future, the archer called out one last time as he dematerialized. But Gaeong didn't fade away just yet. She stood on the precipice of the teleportation circle, her mind racing. You unbelievable, she thought, a cold sweat breaking out on her forehead. Are these the enemies that a single unaffiliated player killed by himself? And from a support whose level is lower than mine, She looked at the piles of corpses, the sheer devastation wrought by a man wielding a rusty metal pipe. The blue flames of his divine power still licked at the scorched earth, a lingering signature of his overwhelming might. Is it a bug? The thought crossed her mind, a desperate attempt to rationalize the impossible. I'll log out first, then, another player announced, vanishing. Gaeong realized she was running out of time. She couldn't let this anomaly slip away. She had to know who he was. She had to secure him for her guild. Mr. Sung Jihan, she called out, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Jihan paused, the teleportation light halfway up his legs. He turned to face her, his expression impassive. Plum blossom sword, he recognized her instantly. In his past life, she had been a tragic figure, a star extinguished too soon. Do you know me? Gaeong asked, surprised by the recognition. Jihan's eyes narrowed slightly. I don't think we would have met before now, he deflected, playing the role of the ignorant rookie. Gaeong didn't press the issue. I need to talk to him, she resolved. With the potential and results he's shown during the 2 tutorials, this man is someone the Twin Star Guild desperately needs. She took a breath, steeling herself. And as a player of Twin Star, I am Gaeong, for the recruitment offer. She stepped closer, her intensity radiating off her. Give me your number. The request hung in the air, blunt and unexpected. Jihan blinked, his stoic mask cracking for a fraction of a second. Huh? He uttered, genuinely confused. Gaeong froze, her face flushing as the realization of her social blunder crashed down on her. What? She panicked internally. Did you explain the whole story? No, is the first thing you asked about his number out of nowhere? Yes. A ploy to get his number after the first meeting. Her mind screamed at her own incompetence. I skipped too many steps. I am part of the Twin Star Guild. She stammered, trying to salvage the situation, but the momentum was gone. Jihan looked at her, his expression shifting from confusion to a polite but firm dismissal. It's for a recruitment offer, she tried again. I'm sorry, Jihan interrupted, bowing his head slightly. The rejection was swift and absolute. Gaeong felt as if she had been struck physically. She stood there, mouth slightly agape. Jihan scratched his cheek, looking a bit sheepish but resolute. I can't remember my number right now, he lied, or so it seemed. I'll tell you if I meet you again. What? Gaeong whispered, her brain refusing to process the excuse. What kind of nonsense is, I don't remember my number? She stared at him, her pride stinging. Jihan tapped the blue system window, finalizing his exit. Then, goodbye, he said, and with a flash of light, he was gone. Gaeong was left alone on the ramparts, the wind howling around her, the rejection echoing in her ears. She let out a breath, her shoulders slumping. Did I just get rejected? Shifted to the bright, clear skies of the real world. Chapter 8. The city of Seoul bustled with life, a stark contrast to the blood-soaked ramparts of the tutorial. Jihan walked down the street, still wearing his tracksuit, blending into the crowd of civilians. He scratched his head, a genuine look of perplexity on his face. Now that I think about it, I've used an American phone number for a long time, he thought, the irony of his excuse to Gaeong hitting him. What was my Korean phone number? He passed a cafe named Someplace, the smell of coffee drifting into the street. It's not like I can ask someone else what my phone number is, he realized, feeling foolish. His mind drifted back to the encounter. More importantly, a recruitment offer. He looked up and saw a massive billboard dominating the side of a skyscraper. Recruiting guild members, it proclaimed, featuring the heroic figures of the Twin Star Guild. Looks like I ended up standing out a bit, he mused, realizing that his performance had attracted the attention of the heavy hitters. It could have ended with me getting her number as well. He stopped walking, his gaze lingering on the billboard. But I don't have any intention of joining a guild right now. he decided firmly. He had his own path to walk, a path of vengeance and redemption that didn't align with corporate guild politics. Status window, he commanded. The blue interface appeared before him, visible only to his eyes. Asterisk name, Sung Jihan. Level, 8, Affiliation, Bronze League, Gangnam Area 1, asterisk. Asterisk martial power, 10. Magic power, 6. Divine power, 7, asterisk. Asterisk class, support. Gift, Wanderer's Eye, rank F, dot asterisk. Title, The One Who Conquered the Tutorial, bronze. GP, 1, 500. Let's see. He analyzed the data, my level increased by 2, level, 8, and I got 1500 GP. Including the increase in my divine power, it's not bad. He scrolled to the GP store, his eyes scanning the list of items. Otherworld's relic, hammer, rank E, 3000 GP, the prices were steep. I can't buy any of the relics with only 1500 GP, he sighed, disappointed. 2020 should be on the cheap side, but it's still this much. He continued his walk, the towering apartment buildings of Gangnam rising around him. He approached a sleek, modern high-rise, the home he had once shared with his family. I should go home and look through Nuna's safe, he planned, hoping to find resources left behind by his sister. The elevator ride was silent, the numbers ticking up to the 67th floor. Beep beep beep, he punched in a code, the electronic lock chirping in recognition. Click, the door opened, revealing a dark, quiet apartment. Jihan stepped inside, the familiar scent of home hitting him. He looked down at the entryway. A pair of women's loafers sat neatly by the door. He stared at them, a jolt of confusion and recognition shooting through him. Beside them lay a plastic bag from a convenience store, filled with instant ramen and snacks. Every person has a moment in their life they regret, the narration began, Jihan's internal monologue turning somber. He stared at the cheap food, a symbol of a lonely, struggling existence. As I lived through my previous life, I also had many regrets. His hand reached for the handle of the inner door, trembling slightly. No, maybe, hope and fear warred in his heart. But among them, the one I regretted the most. He pushed the door open, the light from the living room spilling out to illuminate his face, was that I couldn't protect you. A girl stood in the living room, bathed in the soft afternoon light. She turned, her long dark hair swaying. She was wearing a school uniform, her face young and unblemished. What's up? She greeted him cheerfully. You went outside at this time. Jihan stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes wide, drinking in the sight of her. Yoon, his niece. Alive. How's the hangover? She asked, tilting her head. Jihan didn't answer immediately. Memories flooded his mind, memories of a future that had now been rewritten. I had so many things I wished to tell you if we ever met again, he thought, the emotions threatening to overwhelm him. He saw a vision of himself from the past, sitting on that couch in a white shirt, clutching a bottle of whiskey, broken and useless. It'll be fine. You're very strong, Sa. The ghost of his past self whispered. He saw himself handing her a hangover drink, trying to be an uncle despite his failures. That's why I'll protect you from now on. Thank you for protecting me. And then, the darker memory, the fire, the rubble, the weight of her limp body in his arms. And so just trust in me, uncle, her dying words echoed in his soul. Sorry that I couldn't protect you, he remembered screaming, his voice raw with grief, holding her shattered form as the world burned around them. It might sound shameless of me, he thought, tears pricking the corners of his eyes in the present, but I really... What? Why aren't you saying anything? Sa asked, breaking his trance. Come in and wash your hands, she smiled, a radiant, innocent smile that erased the horror of his memories. Uncle, really wanted to see you again. Jihan stepped into the room, the ghost of the future fading away. Sa, he said, his voice soft. The caption introduced her formally, Yoon Sa. She's 17 years old. She's my niece who was born between Yoon Sa and my Nuna. He looked at her, really looked at her, ensuring she was real. Are you already back from Jeju? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. I ended up returning before the others. She laughed, scratching her cheek nervously. Jihan watched her, a wave of protectiveness washing over him. When she was born, my Nuna was busy with work. So I often took care of Essa ever since she was a little kid. Behind her, on the TV screen, a news report flashed. Sword King, Yoon Sa to join new defense forces. Is Korea safe in the league? The image of her father, the traitor, loomed over them. Everyone's talking about Dad. Sa said, her smile faltering slightly. I lost all of my family when I was a little kid. Now only the two of us are left. Hee. She tried to brush it off with a laugh, but the pain was evident. Jihan smiled gently. She's my important family member. Yoon Sa. He started, wanting to comfort her. Yes. Jihan rubbed his face, hesitating. No. Did you get a call from your dad? He asked, needing to know the extent of the damage. Seiya stiffened. Ah, he did call me, but... She looked down, her hands clasping together, he said. She paused, the words heavy on her tongue. He said, he fell in love. The sentence hung in the air, absurd and cruel, a final dagger from the man who had abandoned them. But for Jihan, it was just another confirmation. The future was changing, but the villains remained the same. And this time, he was ready for them. The words hung in the air like a sick joke, delivered through the speaker of a phone that felt suddenly too heavy to hold. He said, he fell in love. Seiya's voice trembled, relaying the absurd, infuriating excuse her father had given for abandoning his country and his only daughter. Jihan stood in the living room, his blood turning to ice. Anyway, that's all you need to know, Seiya said, trying to end the call, but her composure was cracking. What do you mean, Dad? Fall in love? Did you lose your mind? She screamed into the receiver, her desperation echoing in the empty apartment. I won't ask for your understanding, the man on the other end replied, cold and distant. Then what do you want me to do from now on? Are you really going to abandon me and leave? Seiya cried out. The answer was a single, devastating word. Yes. Seiya sat on the toilet lid, phone pressed to her ear, her world collapsing. That was the condition she put forth before accepting my feelings, her father explained, as if discussing a business deal. Dad, you accepted such a ridiculous condition, she whispered, disbelief warring with heartbreak. I'm hanging up, he said, and the line went dead. Jihan, listening to the retelling of this memory, felt a surge of rage so potent it nearly choked him. Asterisk that piece of trash. Asterisk he stared at the family portrait on the wall, the smiling face of the Sword King mocking him. Ha! He exhaled, a sound of pure fury. No, he was always like that, Jihan realized, his eyes narrowing. An irresponsible piece of trash. Crash! The sound of shattering glass punctuated his thought. Jihan's fist was buried in the wall, right through the face of Yoon Sae-jin. The glass spiderwebbed, obliterating the image of the traitor. He abandoned his country and daughter because of a woman, Jihan seethed, his hand still amidst the ruins of the photo. Do you know how much the innocent Seiya suffered because of you? A dark, terrifying aura began to emanate from him, swirling like black smoke. Seiya watched him, her eyes wide, the sheer intensity of his anger making the air vibrate. Uncle, she called out softly. You broke this photo, right? Jihan froze. The black aura dissipated instantly as he realized what he had done. Oops, he flinched, turning to face her with a look of panic. Seiya. I'm sorry, he stammered, waving his hands defensively. I was just too angry and... He stopped, his internal monologue racing. But he's still Seiya's dad, did I go too far? He looked at her, expecting tears or anger. Instead, Seiya looked at the broken frame with a strange expression. Why did you break it first? She asked, her voice steady. I was thinking of doing it. She clenched her fist, a bright, genuine smile breaking across her face. Uncle, don't worry, she reassured him. I'm okay, really. Jihan looked at her, seeing past the smile. Asterisk yes. Seiya was always like this, asterisk he thought, memories of the future flooding back. Even when her mother died, even when her dad, Yoon Sae-jin, left and abandoned her, she always smiled brightly and was worried more about me than herself. He reached out, his hand hovering for a moment before gently patting her head. But, he said softly. Seiya looked up, surprised by the contact. You don't have to be like that anymore. His hand rested on her hair, a silent vow of protection. From now on, he declared, pulling her into a gentle embrace. Seiya, you've already grown up. She leaned her head against his chest, her eyes widening slightly. You even know how to take care of your uncle. Huh, she mumbled into his jacket. It's okay, Jihan said, holding her close. From now on, I'll protect you. Don't push yourself too much. Seiya closed her eyes, a sense of peace washing over her that she hadn't felt in years. Okay, she whispered, thanks, uncle, but then, she pulled back, sniffing the air. But, she looked up at him with a deadpan expression. Yes? Jihan asked. You stink of sweat. The touching moment evaporated instantly. Ah! Jihan yelped as she shoved a bag of convenience store snacks into his hands and pushed him toward the bathroom. Chapter 9 opened with a view of the Twin Star Guild branch in Gangnam, a towering monument to corporate power. Inside the pristine lobby, Im Gaeon walked briskly, her face a mask of irritation. Behind her, a subordinate struggled to suppress a laugh. PFF, Gaeon stopped, her eye twitching. PFT. Haha, the girl couldn't hold it in. Gaeon glared. Miss, you can laugh out loud. The girl exploded into laughter. No, I wasn't. I'm sorry. PFF. Gaeon sighed, defeated. Just laugh. Ha ha ha, the girl roared, clutching her stomach. Ah, PFT, haha. Gaeong, I'm really sorry. Really, he's someone quite funny. Gaeong rubbed her temple, slightly bothered. To think he'd refuse to give his number to him. Gaeong, I don't remember my phone number. What an excuse. Gaeong walked on, trying to salvage her pride. Well, there's nothing I can do. First impressions are based on appearances. And unlike the miss, I'm not pretty. I look like a man. Her subordinate stopped laughing abruptly. Exclamation point. She looked at Gaeong, stunned. Is she serious? She thought, staring at the stunning woman in front of her. Doesn't she realize how popular she is? Later, in the guild lounge, the subordinate asked, how are you thinking of recruiting Sung Jihan? Gaeong sipped her tea, looking stressed. I must do it, no matter what. The old guys said I should do it no matter the method. I'm stressed out. I also think that Sung Jihan is someone that must be recruited. Suddenly, a notification pinged. The subordinate checked her phone. What? How come this person turned on the stream? She exclaimed. Gaeong looked over. Miss, are you still watching gambling streams? What do you mean by gambling? This is strategy analysis. Yeah, sure, the subordinate projected a hologram. Miss, isn't that? Gaeong's eyes went wide. What? Sung Jihan. On the screen, Jihan was adjusting a camera, broadcasting live. Comments scrolled by rapidly. Is it live? Yes, uncle. The stream looks good on the smartphone. The subordinate gasped. Miss, isn't this the battle prediction stream you used to watch? That isn't important. Sung Jihan, that person. He says he's the Sword King's brother-in-law. On the screen, Jihan stood on a rooftop garden, framed against the blue sky. For real? A viewer commented. Judging by the twin sword statue, he does seem to be in the Sword Palace. Behind Jihan stood the massive twin sword statue, a national landmark. Oh, it's the Sword Palace's roof garden, another comment read. How dare you say the Sword King's name? A fan club member typed furiously. Jihan turned to someone off camera. Move back for a minute. Oh, okay, the chat was confused. Hey, wait, what's he doing? Blue energy began to crackle around Jihan's leg. He raised his foot, power condensing. Nice ass, have you been training? A comment joked, oblivious to the destruction about to unfold. Hey, wait, don't tell me. With a deafening quang, Jihan's foot slammed into the base of the statue. The steel groaned and buckled. Cracks shot up the length of the swords. The chat went wild. Massive chunks of metal began to rain down. The symbol of the Sword King, the pride of the nation, was crumbling under a single kick. The statue collapsed in a cloud of dust and debris. Whoa! The viewer count skyrocketed to 20,316. Dislike buttons were smashed in a frenzy. That bastard, how dare he destroy the Sword King statue? Isn't he afraid of the Sword King's fan club? You crazy old bastards, stop praising a traitor so much. The stream was a war zone. Dislikes hit 103,527. Viewers climbed to 1,297,836. Suddenly, a blue system message appeared before Jihan. You've obtained an achievement. Jihan tore off his ruined jacket, revealing his white shirt. I'm finally feeling refreshed. Okay, then, more notifications flooded his vision. You've obtained an achievement. BattleTube achievement unlocked. Gather viewers. 1. Gather viewers. 2. Gather 100,000 dislikes. Achieve 1,000 likes. The system text explained. Number of viewers, subscribers, and views can all allow me to get rewards when I achieve something. Jihan stood amidst the rubble, the broken statue behind him. There's no better situation than this for him to rake in all the rewards. Chapter 10 began with the confirmation. You have achieved, gather 100,000 dislikes. Jihan smiled at the camera, a cold, calculated look in his eyes. Did he really break that with his bare hands? Someone asked. Jihan ignored it. Just as I expected, there's a lot of dislikes, he thought, satisfied. To think there'd be a time where Yoon Sejin would be of use. The chat was furious. How dare you destroy the twin sword statue that's a symbol of the Sword King? What if the Sword King doesn't come back because you did this? Jihan looked into the lens, his expression hardening. I'll now talk about our position regarding the naturalization of Sword King, Yoon Sejin. He spoke with authority, but his mind was on the dark future he had to prevent. While there were people who supported Yoon Sejin the most, their resentment and anger kept growing as time passed by. And those emotions began to gravitate towards Yoon Sejin's only blood relative, Yoon Sejin. The final image showed a terrifying vision, a faceless, shadowy mob reaching out with clawed hands towards a cowering Sejin. The text around them screamed their twisted logic. The Sword King has abandoned our country because his daughter is misbehaving. Yoon Sejin must die for the Sword King to return. This was the madness Jihan was here to stop. The words hung in the air like a digital curse, projected in blood-red text above the terrified form of Yunesya. The Sword King has abandoned our country because his daughter is misbehaving. The faceless mob surged forward, their shadows elongating into claws that sought to tear the innocent girl apart. Kill her, the text screamed, a chaotic cacophony of misplaced hatred. Kill her. Essia cowered on the ground, tears streaming down her face as the darkness swallowed her whole. In the end, Jihan's narration grimly intoned, since they needed someone to blame and be angry at. The red light intensified, consuming the girl until she was nothing but a silhouette against the blood-colored void. I hope all of you listen to this carefully, Jihan announced, his voice cutting through the visual nightmare. I'll gladly become that target. Kwang, Jihan's fist smashed into the projection, shattering the image of the encroaching mob like glass. The shards of the nightmare dissolved into blue sparks as Jihan stood amidst the digital wreckage, his expression unyielding. Fucker. Stop this right now, you fucking brat. The chat exploded with rage, but Jihan ignored them. You're asking us to listen to what you have to say but you're already destroying things, another user typed. Jihan looked directly into the camera lens, his gaze piercing the screen. Ito Ryuhei won't be coming back, he stated flatly. Seiya stood behind him, her eyes wide with shock at the mention of that name. Jihan pulled out a smartphone, the screen displaying a recording file. I'll let you hear the original recording, he said, holding the device up to the camera. This is the call that Ryuhei had with his daughter after he decided to naturalize as a Japanese. The timer on the screen ticked forward. Seiya's voice, trembling and confused, played through the speakers. Dad, what on earth is happening? Why did you leave so abruptly? The silence that followed was heavy, broken finally by the voice of the man who was once Korea's hero. I found someone that I love. The words echoed across the stream, a confession that felt like a betrayal. The cityscape on the phone screen seemed to mock the listeners with its cold indifference. What? Seiya's recorded voice whispered. The chat fell silent, the users stunned into disbelief. That's the condition that she gave me in order for her to accept my love. The recording ended. Jihan lowered the phone, his face a mask of disgust. This is for her sake, he declared, though the chat was already spiraling. Wow, he's total trash, a user commented. Seiya stood beside him, looking at the camera with a mixture of nervousness and resolve. You're really going to just abandon me here like this? The recording's final plea lingered in the air. Everyone suddenly quiet in the chat window, someone noted. Yes, Jihan confirmed, the single word hanging heavy. The towering skyscrapers of Gangnam reflected in the lens as the reality of the Sword King's abandonment sank in. That's the condition that she gave me in order for her to accept my love. The absurdity of it was undeniable. Jihan tore the ruined sleeve from his jacket, revealing the white shirt beneath. Well, can't stop him if it's for an international marriage. LOL, a cynical comment appeared. Seiya stepped forward, her hands clasped nervously. Hello, I'm Yunesya, Sword King's daughter, she introduced herself, forcing a polite smile. This situation is shocking and abrupt for me as well. I'm standing here because I have something that I must tell everyone. Jihan watched her, his posture protective. My father said he'll pass down the Sword Palace to me, she continued. However, I am unable to accept the inheritance of someone who's abandoned his country and family. Her expression hardened, her eyes clear. And so, this building that he passed down to me, I've decided to donate it to the country. Behind her, the majestic Sword Palace gleamed in the sunlight, a symbol of power she was now rejecting. Has she gone mad? The chat reeled. Did we hear it wrongly? I hope that this donation will become a huge support and benefit to the grooming of Korea's players, Seiya finished. Jihan stepped back into the frame, his torn suit a testament to his earlier rage. I will share further details on this at a later date, he promised, a satisfied smirk touching his lips. 30 minutes ago, the atmosphere in the apartment had been very different. You want us to donate the house? Seiya had exclaimed, her face pale. Are you out of your mind? Why on earth would you want to give away everything we have? She looked at Jihan as if he were insane, clutching her hands together. Jihan dried his hair with a towel, looking calm. I'm in my right mind now, Essia. Essia, that hurts, he complained as she pinched his cheek to check for drunkenness. Honestly, I had no confidence that I could convince her, Jihan thought. But who would be convinced? Since we're not selling a building that people can't build usually even if they work for life, we're donating it away, But I have to convince her no matter what, for her own sake. Jihan's internal monologue darkened as he recalled the original timeline. After Yoon Sejin destroyed Korea completely as Japan's representative, the anger of Koreans grew so big that it was uncontrollable. The memories flashed by like newspaper headlines. Korea suffers a terrible defeat, furious citizens asking the Hunter Association to erase Yoon Sejin. Those who enjoyed benefits because of Yoon Sejin must also take responsibility. The government, unable to handle the rage, confiscated all assets. Sia, who had nowhere to go, couldn't withstand all the stalking and threats from the Sword King family, and took her own life, the image of a lone figure standing on a precipice, surrounded by the blood-red text of hate, burned in Jihan's mind. Since it'll be taken away anyways, I'd rather give it away to win over Koreans and make Sia safe. Back in the apartment, Jihan looked at his niece. To Sia right now, I'm just a freeloader uncle who only drinks all day long at home. I can't just suddenly tell her that I came from the future either. Alright, Sia said suddenly. Jihan blinked, caught off guard. He stammered. Sia, are you really okay with this? He asked, following her as she walked to the kitchen. What's with your reaction? Why are you suddenly acting different now that I say I'm okay with it? She teased. I mean, it doesn't make sense, right? You're not someone who'd say something like that to me for no good reason. She turned back to him, a bright, trusting smile on her face. It's been a long time since I've seen this side of you, a confident uncle. Jihan stared at her, stunned. She's really amazing, he thought, a genuine smile spreading across his face. I wonder who she takes over, seriously. Back on the rooftop, the stream comments were vicious. I'm speaking as one of the Sword King family, Miss Sia. You're being deceived right now, that man is a conman, one user warned. That Song Jihan guy, is he really the Sword King's brother-in-law? He could be a spy sent from Japan, another accused. Jihan crossed his arms, unfazed. Perfect, keep focus firing those insults at me just as you're doing now, he thought, his eyes narrowing. At this rate, those from the Sword King family probably won't mess with Sia, but I have to make sure to drive in the final nail, Yoon Sejin, Jihan said, staring at the camera lens labeled Samsung. Honestly, I think I did a great job, he muttered to Sia, who looked worried. While he said this was all because of a woman, but the truth is, those who know him, know. Sia looked up at him, confusion in her eyes. You, uncle, this wasn't in the script. Jihan ignored the script. That he's a has-been, he declared. The chat paused for a microsecond before erupting. Wow, lol. Is he on drugs? Jihan leaned into the camera, his towering frame casting a shadow over the lens. Did you think we wouldn't know that you escaped to Japan because you couldn't make it in Korea? He taunted, his voice dripping with disdain. Song Jihan, watch your words, a fan club member screamed in the chat. Song Jihan, bronze, declares that Yoon Sejin is a has-been. Another mocked. The screen displayed the word worst in bold, jagged letters as the stream disconnected. Sia stared at the laptop screen, horrified. She gasped. Make sure to stay well in Japan, Jihan's voice echoed from the now-ended broadcast. As I'll be meeting you soon enough to crush you. He stood on the rooftop, adjusting his torn sleeve, the sunset painting the city in hues of orange and gold. Did you have to go that far? Sia asked, looking at him with concern. Jihan smirked, scratching his cheek. There's no way I'd act normally after dying and regressing to the past. I guess I looked like a freeloader who drinks all day long to you. No, wait. How did that even come about? Sia exclaimed, though she admitted internally that it was true. Ding dong, the doorbell rang, interrupting their moment. Jihan turned toward the door. Exclamation point. Sia froze. Who could that be? She asked. What a surprise. I wasn't expecting this to happen yet, Jihan mused. Sia panicked. Don't tell me they're here for you, she cried, imagining an angry mob. Jihan smiled calmly. Don't worry, that's not it. Alright then, let's see. Shall we earn some money? Meanwhile, in Tokyo, Japan, the iconic red tower glowed in the night skyline. Inside a luxurious penthouse, a man sat on the edge of a bed, the blue light of a holographic screen illuminating his face. The text on the screen read, the relationship between Korea and Japan is expected to continually worsen due to the Sword King naturalizing as a Japanese. I guess they must be greatly upset since they lost their best player. A woman's voice came from behind him. She wrapped her arms around his shoulders, her dark hair cascading over his robe. They're criticizing him, saying that, to think this was all for a mere woman. She read the comments aloud. They're wondering just how pretty she could be. That's right. And the problem is Mr. Ryuhei's brother-in-law also sent out provocation, she whispered, her hands sliding down his chest. I'm curious as to how the Sword King will react. Well, I guess it's not unexpected. One could say that his brother-in-law represented the Korean's fury. She leaned closer, her lips brushing his ear. Is all that bothering you? The man, Yoon Sejin, sighed deeply. Oh no, did I wake you up? He asked softly. It's alright. I just had all of that ecstasy that I really don't need to sleep anymore, she replied, her voice sultry. Sejin, I'm just worried that you'll go through a hard time, she said, her tone shifting to mock concern. Yoon Sae-jin closed his eyes, a pained expression on his face. Shizuru, you don't need to call me Sejin anymore. I've now taken your name, so now I'm Ito Ryuhei. No, you're wrong, she interrupted, her hands clasping his tightly. You're Yoon Sejin. She pressed her body against his back, her embrace suffocatingly intimate. Korea, #1 player, the Sword King, Yoon Sejin. She turned his face toward hers, her eyes gleaming with possessive intent. Shizuru, he whispered. She caressed his cheek. That's a truth that hasn't changed. She leaned in and kissed him, a kiss that sealed his fate as a traitor. I love you. The text bubble floated in the doorbell chimed, a mundane sound that signaled the beginning of a high-stakes negotiation. Welcome, Jihan said, pulling the door open to reveal the visitor standing in the hallway. The man wore a suit that cost more than most people's cars, and his smile was practiced, polite, and completely hollow. Thank you, Song Jihan SSI. Excuse me, the guest said, stepping into the entryway with the confidence of someone who walked through doors of power daily. His shoes clicked softly against the tiles as he entered. You seem like you were expecting me, he observed, his eyes scanning Jihan's face for any sign of nervousness. Sae peeked out from behind her uncle, her eyes wide with apprehension. No way, Jihan replied, his voice flat and unimpressed. I just expected the government to step in since the issue became such a big deal. The man bowed slightly, a gesture of professional courtesy rather than genuine respect. South Korean Government Battle Net Department Manager, Park Yun-sik, he introduced himself. The title hung in the air, heavy with bureaucratic authority. After Yoon Sejin left, the department stopped coming, the narration noted, highlighting the fickle nature of government support that vanished the moment their hero turned traitor. Welcome in, Jihan gestured toward the living room, his demeanor relaxed despite the tension. Park Yun-sik turned his gaze to the girl hiding behind Jihan. Long time no see, SEISSI, he greeted, his tone softening into a mask of avuncular kindness. SEIA clasped her hands together, bowing respectfully. This man really took care to take SEIA and I into consideration, Jihan thought, recognizing the calculated diplomacy. Park Yun-sik wasn't just a bureaucrat, he was a handler of potential assets. Hello, manager, they replied, the pleasantries concluding as they moved into the main room. Then, now that the stage is set, Jihan thought, his eyes narrowing as he sat across from the government official. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, but the atmosphere at the table was ice cold. Jihan didn't have the patience for the slow dance of politics. I'll take all the things I need, he decided. Why don't we just get straight to the point instead of beating around the bush, he asked, cutting through the silence like a blade. Park Yun-sik blinked, caught off guard by the directness. He had expected a drunkard or a desperate relative, not a negotiator. It was rather violent, but I watched the show, Park admitted, referring to the live stream where Jihan had declared war on the Sword King. He lifted a cup of tea to his lips, composing himself. The government has accepted that we cannot bring back the Sword King, they know, Park said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The admission was heavy. The government was finally facing the reality that their national hero was gone for good. But we can't let the citizens know about that this soon, he continued, his gaze shifting away as he took a sip. The Korea-Japan match is soon, so. He trailed off, implying the potential for mass hysteria and plummeted morale. Jihan watched him, his expression unreadable. You want me to return the donation of the Sword Palace, right? Jihan stated, stripping away the diplomatic language to reveal the core demand. Park Yun-sik froze, the teacup hovering halfway to the saucer. He hit the nail on the head, the manager thought, a cold sweat forming on his brow. He lowered the cup with a trembling hand, staring at the young man across from him. Is he really that same loser from before? The file on Song Jihan described a gambling addict, a waste of potential, a leech on his brother-in-law's fame. Yet the man sitting here was sharp, perceptive, and terrifyingly calm. From what I remember, he was just a jobless dude addicted to alcohol and gambling. You're correct, Park admitted, deciding that honesty was the only path forward against such an opponent. We haven't fully given up hope of the Sword King's return. We'd like to suggest a consigned management instead of a donation. The term was technical, a legal shield designed to protect assets while waiting for a miracle. Consigned management, the text explained, change of ownership to someone else to manage an organization or business. Jihan crossed his arms, his mind working faster than the manager could anticipate. Asterisk they're smart. Taking responsibility for management until the real owner is back Asterisk SEIA looked confused by the difficult word, but Jihan understood the play perfectly. Then the condition is to return the ownership to the Sword King if he returns, Jihan asked, verifying the terms. Park nodded, reaching into his briefcase. Yes, that's right, so, it'd be nice if you could continue to reside in the Sword Palace. Both of you. He slid a thick envelope across the marble table. Consigned management contract. Jihan looked at the document, realizing the irony of the situation. They're all conditions that should be a win-win for the both sides, so please read it over and think about it, Park urged. They really put a lot of thought into this situation, Jihan realized. The government was desperate to maintain the illusion of stability. I was gonna hand it over whole anyway, but if they're willing to do this, then that's even better for me. He would get to keep the house, gain public favor by donating it, and have the government protected from the Sword King's wrath. I understand, Jihan said, accepting the deal. Park Yunsik placed his hand over the contract, stopping Jihan from taking it immediately. There's a favor we'd like to ask too, he added, his eyes gleaming with a new request. Jihan paused. What kind of favor would it be? He asked. Cut away before the details could be revealed, leaving the nature of the government's request a mystery. Me too? Sa asked in the background, surprised. Jihan smiled, a knowing look on his face. That's. The narrative shifted abruptly, leaving the stuffy apartment for the digital roar of the arena. The title card slammed onto the screen. Martial God regressed to level 2, episode 11. The setting was now the bloody dusty Colosseum, a place of violence and glory. High above the combatants, atop a massive stone statue, a figure stood silhouetted against the sun. A notification chimed. Asterisk has begun streaming. Asterisk, hi, a fan typed in the chat. Oh, you're streaming? Another asked. The figure on the statue let out a dramatic, attention-seeking shout. Ha! Below, players looked up in confusion. Hey, wait, where is this bastard? On the head of the Colosseum statue, the golden figure posed, his cape snapping in the wind. LMAO, what an attention whore, a cynic commented. With a theatrical leap, the warrior plummeted from the heights. Welcome to my stream, everyone, he bellowed mid-air, his voice amplified for maximum annoyance. He landed with a superhero impact, dust swirling around his golden boots. Traveling specialist streamer, he announced, flashing a blindingly bright smile at the camera drone. Coming to you again with a bright smile. His armor was a garish gold, polished to a mirror sheen that screamed wealth and arrogance. Welcome, Goldie, the chat scrolled. I was waiting so damn long for you lol. A donation alert rang out, the sound of digital coins hitting a cup. Asterisk, part-time boss, has gifted you 100 GP. Teach those bronze bastards a lesson today too, golden light, asterisk. The streamer's face contorted into a greedy grin. Oh, my, a donation right away, he exclaimed. Suddenly, he began to shake his hips in a grotesque parody of a popular dance. I'll react with this 02 dance in appreciation even though it's a dead trend, he shouted, shamelessly debasing himself for views. Bro, how old is that trend? A viewer asked, cringing. I'm disgusted, another typed. In the background, the other players watched this display with sheer hatred. A warrior in gray armor stared, his fists clenched, that fucking. Tears of frustration streamed down his face. Fuck, dear God, I was hoping for him to get hit by a car. He whimpered, it's that son of a bitch again. The hatred was palpable. He's an infamous troll, the narration revealed, exposing the rot beneath the golden armor. Asterisk, he used to be a respected gold leaguer, but he demoted himself to bronze for content, calling it deep sea traveling. An image flashed to the golden warrior diving into a cartoon ocean, chasing terrified fish labeled bronze. Asterisk, he doesn't care about the game itself. He only cares about having fun. Asterisk, the visual of him splashing in the water, terrorizing the weak, perfectly encapsulated his twisted psyche. Asterisk, the pinnacle of a troll. Asterisk, wow, there are people here so deep in the ocean. Wahahaha, his laughter was a screech of pure malice. His equipment and stats are still gold rank, so he supposedly feels excitement in harassing and killing bronze players who are weaker than him. Back in the arena, he feigned innocence, a sweat drop emoji floating above his head. I'm not that evil, he typed, mocking their anger. They're right, you sociopath bastard. The internal screams of the bronze players echoed the sentiment of anyone who had ever faced a smurf account. Golden light touched his chin, his eyes scanning the crowd like a predator selecting the weakest gazelle. Anyway, that's enough boring talk, he declared, dismissing their pain. Let's see who the first victim will be. He drew his sword, the blade glowing with enchantments far too powerful for this tier. Let's look at some players he began, the camera zooming in on the cowering newbies. But then, his gaze snagged on something unexpected. His eyes widened. That's standing calmly amidst the panicked crowd was a man in a simple tracksuit, holding a wooden practice bat. The streamer's brain short-circuited, replacing fear with opportunistic greed. Asterisk content. Asterisk, he thought, seeing not a threat, but a viral thumbnail. He had no idea that the content he just found was about to demonetize his entire existence. Content? The streamer's internal monologue screamed, his eyes locking onto the man in the tracksuit as if he had just discovered a vein of pure gold. Standing amidst the chaos of the arena, holding a humble wooden practice bat, Song Ji-han looked less like a warrior and more like a confused pedestrian who had wandered onto a battlefield. He's treating him like an object, the chat observed, the digital peanut gallery already sensing the disparity in dignity. Song Ji-han SSI, the golden streamer bellowed, rushing forward with a microphone in hand, desperate to milk this encounter for every ounce of engagement it was worth. Ji-han's expression remained flat, a mask of utter indifference that only fueled the streamer's frantic energy. I would love to interview you, the streamer shouted, shoving the mic into Ji-han's personal space. What the hell? Ji-han thought, his annoyance barely contained. The golden figure rattled off titles like a carnival barker, Sword King's brother-in-law, Bronze's best player, Twin Sword Statue Breaker, trying to pin a label on the enigma before him. You go by many nicknames. You've been eating up people's attention lately. Ji-han ignored the accolades, his attention drifting as the streamer's voice grated on his nerves. Asterisk, is he a BattleTube streamer? He's so loud. Asterisk, he realized, the noise triggering a sudden strategic thought. If this clown was streaming, then the audience was already here. Now that I think about it, there are quite a few BattleTube achievements I haven't accomplished yet, Ji-han mused, his hand moving to his own interface. With a few deft taps, he prepared to turn the tables. I'll raise the views a bit, he decided, effectively hijacking the moment. Whoa, guys, the streamer exclaimed, posing for the camera with a thumbs up, completely unaware that his spotlight was being stolen in real time. I'm being completely and perfectly ignored, he narrated to his audience, trying to play off the awkwardness as comedy, but the chat was already shifting. You gotta be at least on the Sword King's level to talk to him, lol, a viewer mocked. Then, the realization hit the chat room. Hey, I think Song Ji-han's also streaming. The digital tide turned instantly. Oh yeah, he is. There's the on-air mark. Let's go watch. The streamer's face fell, his golden facade cracking as he watched his view count hemorrhage. He's streaming. Shit, he cursed internally, panic setting in. Then I basically advertised him for free. I need people to watch my stream, not his. His desperation was cut short by a notification that would change the nature of this game entirely. A mission window popped up, glowing with malicious intent, has registered a reward mission. Kill Song Ji-han so that he ends up in last place. Reward if successful 2000 GP, the streamer's eyes bulged. Asterisk WH what? 1 GP is about 1001, so this is like 2 million won. Who is? Asterisk before he could finish the thought, the chat flooded with bloodlust. Golden Light Nim, please kill Song Ji-han for the Sword King family. We'll add to the reward. The numbers began to tick upward, fueled by a collective grudge that defied logic. The Sword King family, the streamer gasped, sweat beading on his forehead as the donation alert stacked like Tetris blocks. The reward has been increased again and again, the blue boxes flashed, piling wealth upon wealth. I knew they had a grudge against Song Ji-han, but not to this extent, he thought, watching the figure climb past 30,000 GP. His moral compass spun wildly before shattering under the weight of avarice. It's already past 30,000, and it's now at 40,000. He covered his mouth, trembling not with fear, but with the sheer ecstasy of profit. At this rate, I might get to 50,000 GP, the system announced the start of the game, but for Golden Light, the game had become a transaction. Kill Song Ji-han so that he ends up in last place. Reward if successful 42,713 GP. He fell to his knees, screaming in a mix of joy and madness. All woo, he roared, looking like a man possessed. Ji-han watched him with mild disgust. Damn, that much is disappointing to you, a viewer commented, misunderstanding the streamer's breakdown. Psycho-ass bastard lol, another added. He's way too obsessed with money. The streamer clutched his face, tears of greed streaming down his cheeks. I could have made it to 50,000, he wept, grieving the potential earnings before he had even struck a blow. But then, a final donation sealed his resolve. If you really defeat Song Ji-han, then I'll donate 10,000 GP, his hand snapped up, wiping away the tears. His expression shifted from pathetic to predatory in a heartbeat. I, Golden Light, have received your determination, he declared, his cape swirling dramatically as he rose. His demeanor changed, the goofy persona replaced by a cold, calculated seriousness that the chat dubbed money-greedy mode. He drew his sword, the blade gleaming with expensive enchantments. Look at him. He's so serious that he became black and white, the chat observed. TBH I'd be the same if I was getting 50 million 12 LMAO. Golden Light pointed his weapon at Ji-han, his voice dripping with theatrical menace. That's a real good deal lol, he chuckled darkly. Song Jihan SSI, you can fall into despair now. From now on, Golden Light, will end your game. He activated his skill, his body accelerating to blinding speeds. Act as your own personal Grim Reaper, he screamed, rushing forward like a golden bullet. Jihan didn't flinch. He didn't even raise a proper guard. He simply held out the wooden bat. What a nice and sturdy sword, Jihan thought sarcastically, watching the incoming missile. With a casual swing, he met the charge head-on. The impact was thunderous, but it wasn't Jihan who flew back. The wooden bat, infused with a power far beyond its appearance, stopped the golden warrior cold. The shockwave rippled through the arena, leaving the streamer stunned and his sword vibrating from the recoil. Jihan looked at the bat, then at his inventory. I swung with all I had, he noted, unimpressed by the result. He unequipped the bat, the wooden weapon vanishing into pixels. Then I guess I should also use a sword out of etiquette, he murmured. In his hands appeared a strange combination, a club and a kitchen knife. The item description for the cooking set read, aliens use this to cook heathens. It was a weapon made for slaughter, disguised as culinary tools. The chat was baffled. But what's with his weapons? They asked. Jihan didn't explain. He simply moved. Raising the kitchen knife, he unleashed a flurry of strikes that defied the laws of bronze-rank combat. Blue energy slashed through the air, sword chi, sharp and lethal. Kuhawuk, golden light screamed as the invisible blades carved into his armor. The chat exploded in confusion. What was that? Is that sword chi? Yeah it is. Holy shit, a bronze-using sword chi. But guys, isn't white sacred flames divine power? The questions piled up, but the result was undeniable. Player, Song Jihan, First Blood. The system announced the kill with cold efficiency. Achievement points increased by 100. Standing over the fallen streamer, Jihan looked at the smoking knife in his hand. I haven't cooked in a while, he thought, the thrill of the hunt fading into a dull satisfaction. The streamer's body lay still, the golden armor tarnished and broken. Jihan turned away, dismissing the opponent as finished business. He grunted, ready to move on. But the show wasn't over. Deep within the darkness of death, a voice narrated its own resurrection. I have fallen into the dark void of death, where I can see nothing, and all of my life has been lost, the streamer's internal monologue recited, dramatic even in defeat. However, the darker the night, the brighter the light. A golden feather floated down from the void, touching the broken body. Light erupted from the corpse, blinding and brilliant. I, Golden Light Streamer, have been reborn for you all, he shouted, rising from the dead with a renewed, manic energy. The chat was dumbfounded. How is this guy alive? Is he hacking? This is that thing, a knowledgeable viewer typed. Cross of Resurrection. The golden nuisance had returned, fueled by items and an unyielding desire for donations, proving that in this game, money could even buy a second life. The blinding radiance of a miracle flooded the arena, a pillar of holy light that defied the finality of death itself. From the void, a golden cross descended, its surface etched with divine runes that whispered of second chances purchased at a premium. The chat room, previously mocking the streamer's demise, now erupted in a frenzy of confusion and accusation. How is this guy alive? One viewer typed, the question echoing the collective bewilderment of thousands. Is he hacking? Another asked, unable to comprehend how a player whose head had just been smashed like a ripe melon was now standing amidst a swirl of celestial particles. But the veterans of the pay-to-win ecosystem recognized the visual signature immediately. This is that thing, a knowledgeable user noted, identifying the exorbitant item that broke the balance of the game, the Cross of Resurrection. It was a legendary consumable, a safety net for the wealthy that allowed a single resurrection per game, though it was banned in national leagues and major events for obvious reasons. Here, in the lawless wild of a normal match, it was fair game. The light coalesced, reforming the shattered body of the golden streamer, knitting bone and flesh back together until he stood whole once more. His golden armor gleamed with renewed luster, his cape billowing in a phantom wind as he struck a pose of triumphant return. He was alive, fueled by the donations of his bloodthirsty audience and the power of his wallet. My, he crooned, his voice dripping with regained confidence as he wagged a finger at his killer. I let down my guard and ended up showing you something unbecoming. He tapped his temple, signaling his superior intellect, fully believing that this resurrection was merely a dramatic plot twist in his personal hero's journey. But if you wait just a moment, you will see me gloriously separate Sung Jihan's head from his. Jihan stared at the man, his expression unreadable, a mask of utter boredom. He talks too much, Jihan thought, his patience evaporating. The streamer was still mid-monologue, basking in the glow of his own resurrection, when reality arrived in the form of a horizontal blue line. There was no wind-up, no scream of effort, just the sudden, sharp hiss of air being split. The streamer's eyes went wide, his sentence cut short not by a period, but by a slash of sword chi that bisected his golden ambition. Why? He screamed, his second life ending faster than his first. The system was ruthless in its efficiency. Player, Sung Jihan, double kill. The notification hung in the air, a digital tombstone for the man who thought money could buy skill. Jihan lowered his weapon, unimpressed. It's been a while since I've seen someone use that, he mused internally, recalling the cross of resurrection from his past life. It was a powerful item, yes, but in the future he came from, it had fallen out of favor. In the future, rather than the penalty, people didn't use it because of its flaw. That he didn't elaborate on the flaw, dismissing the thought as he turned his gaze toward the stands. The arena, usually filled with the roar of digital spectators, felt different today. More importantly, I thought it was a bit noisier than usual today, he observed, scanning the grand architecture of the Colosseum. But it's because we have spectators now that it's a real game. His eyes locked onto a group of figures seated in the VIP section, their elegance stark against the brutal backdrop of the arena. They were tall, pale, and radiated an aura of supreme arrogance. So, the spectators this time are elves, Jihan realized, his grip tightening on his weapon. The chat marveled at the high-resolution rendering of the fantasy race, cooing over their beauty, but Jihan saw only enemies. Unpleasant bastards, he spat in the privacy of his mind. Those guys also played a big part in the destruction of humanity. To the viewers, they were content. To Jihan, they were the architects of an apocalypse he was determined to prevent. Well, still, he thought, forcing himself to look away. I was planning on dealing with that later anyway. I need to deal with the ones in front of me first. He turned back to the arena floor, only to find it rapidly emptying. The other players, witnessing the effortless double execution of a high-level streamer, had come to a unanimous decision: flee. They scrambled over walls and sprinted toward the exits, their survival instincts overriding any desire for combat. What am I, an outcast or something? Jihan wondered, watching them scatter like cockroaches exposed to light. Heek! A warrior screamed, vaulting a barrier in sheer terror. Now's not the time for us to be fighting each other. Run faster, a mage yelled, his robes flapping as he ran. Some Jihan will kill golds as well. The reputation of the bronze rank anomaly had mutated into that of a horror movie villain. Jihan sighed, watching his prey vanish into the labyrinthine corridors of the map. Ah, the hunting efficiency is dropping too low, he calculated, realizing that chasing them down one by one would be a waste of time. He needed targets that would come to him. I even went and got a D-rank relic, he murmured, looking at the strange assortment of items in his hands, a sturdy wooden club and a sharp kitchen knife. I need to fight more to discover if there is a manifestation condition or not. He swapped the knife to his other hand, the blade catching the light. What the? A holographic window materialized before him, glowing with the blue hue of a system quest. Goblin subjugation, the text read. Subjugate the goblins that have gathered around the goblin champion. As if on cue, the ground rumbled, and the air filled with the screeching of monsters. A horde of green-skinned creatures poured into the arena, led by a massive shadow. Jihan's lips curled into a faint smile. This is a pleasant surprise. The universe, it seemed, wanted to help him test his new toys. A goblin lunged at him, its jagged dagger raised, screaming, "Kihik," in a frenzy of bloodlust. Jihan didn't dodge. He stepped in, the wooden club in his right hand blurring as he swung. Save Mike! The goblin's gargled cry was cut short by a sickening crunch. The bat connected with the creature's skull, the impact sending shockwaves through its small body. Plasashii, it squealed, crumpling to the ground. Jihan didn't stop. The moment the bat made contact, his left hand moved. The kitchen knife flashed, a silver streak that plunged into the goblin's chest. Break the head and cut the heart. Jihan recited the combo in his mind, the movements flowing together like a dark dance. Since they're set equipment, there is an order to using them. The system chimed in approval. You have used the relic properly. Two-step cooking set, rank, D, reacts. Jihan felt the resonance, a surge of energy that confirmed his theory. As I thought, this is how you use them, he noted, his eyes gleaming with cold satisfaction. It's great that I discovered it before the game ended. He looked around. The goblin horde lay in ruins, their bodies scattered across the sand. But it really did take too long, he admitted, surveying the carnage. If I figured it out just a little sooner, there would have been a few more goblins left. Whatever, he dismissed the thought, sensing a looming presence behind him. It's not completely over yet. A shadow engulfed him, massive and suffocating. Behind him stood the goblin champion, a behemoth of muscle and rage, wearing a necklace of skulls and wielding a club the size of a tree trunk. The system helpfully provided a boss description, Unlike the other goblins who are only 1m tall, this goblin can grow to 3m and possesses excellent intelligence and physical prowess. It uses its incredible stats too. Jihan glanced at the wall of text and sighed. The description is hella long. He didn't wait for the boss to finish its roar. He launched himself upward, the wooden bat leading the charge. With a thunderous crack, he smashed the champion's skull, interrupting its entrance and its life simultaneously. The giant monster staggered, its eyes rolling back. So what? Jihan muttered, landing gracefully. He switched to the knife, delivering the follow-up strike to the heart with surgical precision. In the end, you're just a big goblin. The massive body collapsed, kicking up a cloud of dust. Quest clear, the system announced. You have been awarded 500 achievement points, but that wasn't the only reward. A notification popped up, one that Jihan had been waiting for. Gained 1 divine power. White energy swirled around him, absorbed into his being. He checked the item status. 2-step cooking set's rank has decreased from D rank to E rank. Jihan analyzed the change. The relic consumed its own rank to generate divine power when the combo was executed perfectly. Since it's still E rank, I'll be able to obtain divine power from them one more time, he calculated, weighing the wooden bat in his hand. But there was a problem. The weapons were losing their edge, their power diminishing with the rank drop. But it'll be too slow to hunt with them, he concluded. As I thought. He looked toward the distant exits where the other players had fled. The goblins were dead, the boss was slain, and he still needed more. His gaze hardened, the predator refocusing on the only prey left. I need to hunt players. Far away, the survivors were still running, unaware that the monster in the tracksuit was coming for them. They ran really far away, Jihan sighed, starting his pursuit. It's tiresome, but it can't be helped. The blinding radiance of the Colosseum's sun beat down on the empty arena floor, highlighting the absurdity of the situation. They ran really far away, Jihan sighed, the distance between him and his prey stretching out like a bad joke. His patience, already thin, was fraying at the edges. It's tiresome, but it can't be helped, he muttered, adjusting his sleeves with the casual demeanor of a man preparing to do chores rather than commit a massacre. If they won't come to me until the end, he reasoned, his internal logic cold and predatory, I'll have to go to them. The air around him began to crackle, blue arcs of electricity dancing off his tracksuit like manifestations of his killing intent. He gripped his weapons, the wooden bat and the kitchen knife, transforming from a bored participant into a calamity. The chat, sensing the shift in atmosphere, ceased their mockery. Look how serious he looks, one user typed, a shiver virtually transmitted through the screen. Super scary LMAO, another agreed, while a third critiqued, Sung Jihan doesn't know how to appeal to the broadcast, missing the point entirely. Jihan wasn't there to entertain, he was there to exterminate. Meanwhile, in the real world, the humiliating reality of defeat was setting in. In a high-end gaming setup in Yeoksam, Gangnam, the golden streamer tore at his hair, a scream of frustration ripping from his throat. Hiya, he bellowed, the sound of a bruised ego. He stared at his monitors, replaying the moment of his death. That bastard, he just attacked me, right? My goodness, he ranted to his chat, trying to salvage his reputation. Weren't you the one who praised me for being good at streaming? He deflected, desperately needing validation. And am I weak? No, he's just abnormally strong, he shouted, realizing that admitting Jihan's strength was the only way to preserve his own dignity. Are you even attempting to analyze this? He demanded of his viewers, pulling up the data. The numbers on the screen were impossible. Estimated stats, strength 33, agility 37, vitality 36, magic power 34, the streamer's eyes bulged. Just the estimated stats we got during his fight with the goblins had an average of 35, he collapsed onto his desk, his face pressed against the cool surface, his mind reeling. The stat limit for Bronze League is 25, so how does 35 make any sense? He whispered, the math of the game broken by this anomaly. He's gotta be hacking somehow. His accusation was interrupted by a sound that didn't belong in a strategy game. Kurik, a guttural, wet squeal echoed through his speakers. The streamer lifted his head, confused. The kill counter on the screen ticked up. Player, Sung Jihan 1 kill. He looked closer at the broadcast feed, his eyes widening as he saw the carnage. Jihan was a blur of violence, smashing into a group of players with the force of a freight train. Where did that dying pig sound come from? The streamer asked, before realizing with a jolt of horror that the sound had come from a human player. What? He stammered, watching as Jihan unleashed a hurricane of blows. What is that one-sided attack? On the screen, Jihan was conducting a symphony of destruction. He blocked a sword strike with his bat, then countered with a kick that sent an opponent flying. The movements were fluid, brutal, and terrifyingly efficient. Player, Sung Jihan, double kill. The system announced the deaths with a cheerful ping. The chat went wild. Wow, it's just art, one user marveled. How the hell did he get 4 kills in 1-LMO? Another asked, unable to comprehend the speed. Jihan didn't pause. He spun, his knife flashing, cutting down another fleeing victim. Triple kill, he vaulted over a crumbling wall, landing on a mage who had no time to cast a spell. Quadra kill, the momentum carried him forward, his bat swinging in a lethal arc that connected with a warrior's helm. Penta kill, the notifications stacked up, a testament to the widening gap between the hunter and the hunted. In the ruins of the Colosseum, the remaining survivors were turning on each other in their panic. Now's not the time for us to be fighting, a man in a vest screamed at a bald mage. Give me your buff, you tool. The mage, eyes wide with fear, shot back. What tool? They were rats in a trap, snapping at each other while the cat approached. The man in the vest raised a crossbow, aiming it not at the enemy, but at the impending doom. You damn spoon-looking, he yelled, his insults nonsensical in the face of death. Jihan arrived, his presence suffocating. Hey, you fucking hacker, the crossbowman shouted, clinging to the only explanation that made sense to his terrified mind. Jihan looked at him with eyes devoid of mercy. Just piss off already, he roared, delivering a front kick that sent the man flying off the edge of the arena structure. The man plummeted, his scream fading into the abyss. Jihan turned to the next target. The wooden bat in his hand hummed with potential energy. Smash the head, he thought, swinging with practiced ease. The bat connected with a sickening thud, the impact reverberating through the air. What is that power? A player gasped before collapsing. Jihan followed up instantly with the knife, the two-step cooking set demanding a specific rhythm. Cut the heart, the blade sank deep, finishing the job. Nearby, 2 players hiding behind a pillar watched the massacre, their laughter nervous and hysterical. Lol, lol, they typed, their minds breaking under the strain. Then, Jihan turned his gaze toward them. The laughter died. TLQKF, one typed, the Korean characters for a curse word escaping his fingers as Jihan loomed over them. The bat rose, and the screen went dark for them. Player, Sung Jihan, double kill, the notification rang out, marking the end of the resistance. The chat was in disbelief. WTF. He has 10 kills now, a viewer exclaimed. LMOO absolutely insane, another noted the historical significance. Isn't this the first time someone got 10 kills in survival since Yoon Sae Jin? The comparison to a legend solidified Jihan's status. That traitor again, LOL, someone joked darkly. Jihan ignored the accolades. A blue window appeared before him. 2-step cooking set, rank, E, reacts, he felt the surge of energy. Gained 1 divine power, immediately followed by the cost. 2-step cooking set's rank has decreased from E rank to F rank. The weapons were now barely better than trash, but he had extracted what he needed. Another window popped up. Hidden quest clear, 10 kills in the Colosseum. You have been awarded 5,000 achievement points. Jihan stared at the rewards, his expression hard. Divine power and achievement points. I got everything I wanted, but, he clenched his fist, the hunger for power gnawing at him. It's still far from enough, mere survival wasn't the goal. He needed dominance. I need one big win, he told himself, his ambition reaching beyond the Bronze League. Suddenly, a sharp ring pierced the air. Jihan's eyes widened. This is. A new holographic window materialized, glowing with a deeper, more intense blue. Epic quest, the text proclaimed, sending a jolt of adrenaline through his veins. An epic quest appeared in the Bronze League. Jihan was stunned. These were rare, game-changing events. He read the objective. Find the Shadow Queen among the spectators in the Colosseum and provoke her. His eyes darted to the reward section. Reward, 50,000 achievement points, a massive sum. But the second reward was what stopped his heart. The interest of the constellation, Shadow Queen. The world seemed to pause as Jihan processed the information. Constellation, he whispered the word with reverence and dread. An absolute being who represents a star and the godlike beings of Battle.net. In the lore of this universe, they were the patrons of power. The interest of such constellations will lead to sponsorship, and will allow you to obtain powers you can't normally get. Getting a constellation's attention in the Bronze League was unheard of. Something that's possible only after getting to at least diamond rank just appeared before me. He realized, the magnitude of the opportunity weighing on him. I need to achieve this no matter what. He formulated a plan instantly. If I can garner the interest of at least one constellation, the other constellations will start to have interest in me as well. It was a domino effect of power. But then, the difficulty of the quest settled in. But, he looked up at the grandstands of the Colosseum, where thousands of figures sat in silent judgment. Will I be able to find her? The rain began to fall harder, blurring the lines between the spectators. Somewhere among all those elves, he thought, scanning the rows of pale, beautiful, and utterly identical faces. The elves stared back with cold, glowing eyes, an ocean of apathy. lies the Shadow Queen. Finding a god hiding amongst mortals was a task fit for a hero or a madman. Jihan tightened his grip on his F-rank weapons. The achievement he obtained this time was 10 kills, but the real hunt was just beginning. The Colosseum was silent, save for the digital echoes of a massacre that had just rewritten history. At the Colosseum, 10 kills, the text proclaimed, a stark numerical testament to the violence that had just unfolded. Sung Jihan stood amidst the fading particles of his enemies, his expression unreadable, a calm storm in a tracksuit. Within the country, it was the first time someone had achieved this level of dominance in survival since the legendary Yoon Sae Jin, and this news began to spread through the various community chats and through social media like a digital contagion. The Sword King Fan Club, a group dedicated to Jihan's failure, had tuned in with the express purpose of mocking him, but their collective hate-watching had backfired spectacularly. As a result, the stream managed to reach 10,000 subscribers and a peak live viewer count of over 4,000. The comments section, once a pit of vipers, had turned into a confused mixture of awe and mockery directed at the detractors. Look at the Sword King Fan Club members trembling in rage, one user typed. I only watch the best, another added, twisting the knife. At this point, isn't the Sword King Fan Club just advertising on behalf of Sung Jihan? The irony was palpable. The Sword King Fan Club who wished Sung Jihan to fail ended up just helping him out instead. And so, all of the hatred ended up being pointed towards Golden Light, the streamer who had foolishly tried to hunt the predator. His stream list was now a graveyard of insults. This bitch needs to die, one comment screamed. How can a fucker who can't even beat a bronze civilian get to gold? Another demanded, questioning the very validity of his rank. You better be careful when you walk alone at night, Golden Light, a third threatened. The humiliation was total. The man who only reached 20% of Sung Jihan's kills. Lol, a pixelated avatar mocked. He ended up just promoting him through his stream. LMAO. Golden Light lay slumped in his chair, sweat beading on his forehead, a forced, desperate smile plastering his face. LOL, the internet is fucked, he muttered, realizing his career was balancing on a knife's edge. At this point, there's nothing much I can do, he admitted to the empty room, the glow of his monitors illuminating his defeat. But desperation breeds innovation. He stood up abruptly, his resolve hardening. And starting from this point, he declared, pivoting with the shameless agility of a content creator, starting today, I'll be riding on the Sung Jihan train. The image of him cheering behind a stoic Jihan filled his imagination. With this event, I became his fan. God Jihan, streamer Golden Light began to dream of becoming the editor of Sung Jihan, seeing a golden parachute in the man who had just destroyed him. I will turn you into the best BattleTube star, he vowed to the image of Jihan's back. Of course, Sung Jihan's opinions were not considered in this unilateral business partnership. Shifted from the chaotic internet to the quiet reality of night. High above the city streets, in a modern apartment, Yoon Sae sat frozen on the couch. Wow. She breathed, her eyes wide. What the fuck did I just watch? She asked the empty air, the brutality of the replay still searing her retinas. She turned to her uncle, who was casually drinking a glass of water in the kitchen. Uncle, when did you become so much stronger? She asked, her voice filled with a mixture of shock and suspicion. Jihan lowered the glass, his demeanor nonchalant. The other people are all calling this pitiful. This is just smuffing, he said, repeating the online sentiment. Sa wasn't buying the deflection. The world of battle has always been a cold bitch, Jihan quoted himself, trying to sound profound. Sa's expression went flat. Wow, uncle, your one-liner just now was lame AF. She moved on to more practical matters. Well, besides that, it seems like everyone wants to donate, so why are you blocking off donations? Jihan summoned a blue holographic window, realizing his mistake. I just forgot to set one up separately. Sa offered a suggestion. Then while you're setting it up, why don't you raise the minimum donation amount? Jihan paused. He considered it. If they can just donate whenever they want and the donation notification keeps ringing, it'll be difficult to focus on the game. That's true, he came to a decision. Then, should I set it to around 10,000 GP? Sa recoiled. Yeah. Then isn't that around $10,000? That's too high, she shouted, appalled by his audacity. Jihan sat on the couch, ignoring the financial critique. More importantly, his thoughts drifted to the notification he had received earlier. Or maybe not. Is it actually on the cheap side? He wondered briefly about the donation, before his mind locked onto the real issue. The epic quest that I received this time. He recalled the objective. It was to find and provoke the Shadow Queen, right? The memory of the Colosseum stands filled his mind. No matter how I think about it, I can't think of a way to find her in that crowd of people. Thousands of elves, identical in their apathy, stared back at him in his memory. Should I help you? Sa asked, breaking his reverie. Jihan looked up, surprised. Seiya smiled warmly. You always make that sort of expression when something isn't working out right, uncle. You can get everything off your chest when you're with me. I'll help. Jihan looked at her, seeing the resemblance to his sister. I'm saying, even if she takes after Nuna, she takes after her way too much, he thought, a soft smile touching his lips. Really? He asked. Then, shall I see how great my little niece's abilities are? He explained the situation. I have a quest where I need to find the Shadow Queen in the Colosseum. Seiya tilted her head. The Shadow Queen? Who's that? Jihan shrugged. I don't know either. Besides the information that she's somewhere in the spectator seats, there really are all sorts of quests. Seiya pumped her fists. For now, how about this? I'll look through all the replays slowly and look for her. Jihan was taken aback by her willingness to perform such tedious labor. I'll be waiting then, he said, standing up. As he walked to his room, guilt gnawed at him. I'm strangely feeling a bit guilty after telling her to do that. It's probably like finding a needle in a haystack. He closed his door, isolating himself. Still, it's fine. He reassured himself, she's so special. It's what Seiya especially said to me, so I should just thankfully receive her help. With the search delegated, he turned to his own progression. Then, since I've earned some extra time with this, shall I begin going through the settlements that I've been pushing off? He opened his system interface. A golden window appeared, Achievement Shop LV4. He focused on a specific item. The extra class slot that I purchased using all of the achievement points I've saved up so far. The item cost 10,000 P. With this, I'm now able to add an extra class. The system prompted him. You may choose one class. The options hovered in blue light, warrior, archer, mage. And the job that I'll be choosing this time, Jihan thought, his finger extending towards the screen. He tapped the third option. Mage. The system confirmed. You have completed your class change to mage. A swirl of purple energy erupted from the floor, encircling him in a vortex of arcane power. I can feel the flow of a new power in my heart, he noted, pressing a hand to his chest where the energy pulsed. It's a different feeling from divine power. Then shall I try it out right away? The reason why I chose mage after choosing supporter, he mused, his eyes narrowing. That is because of a unique stat that can only be obtained after having both classes. He brought his hands together, one glowing with the white light of divinity, the other with the purple aura of magic. He began to force them together. HMPH-, he grunted, the opposing energies fighting for dominance, sparking violently. That is, force. The word triggered a memory. Jihan was suddenly sitting in a luxurious bar, the city lights blurring outside. He was next to an older, bearded man, Baron. Jihan, I feel that it's too unfortunate, Baron slurred in English, a glass of bourbon in his hand. Master, how many times have you told me this story already? Jihan asked, weary. Baron pulled him closer. If only you had been naturalized a little bit faster, I would have acknowledged you as an American and taken better care of you. Jihan narrated the memory. When he was drunk, he would occasionally tell me stories that he had kept hidden away in his heart. However, someday we may be able to mesh perfectly. Baron held up the bottle. But that day, he talked about a subject that was a bit different from normal. Just like the day I was able to obtain force. Baron pointed a finger upward, a wisp of reddish energy curling around it. By force, do you mean master's ability? The younger Jihan asked. Baron looked at him, confused. Have I never told you this before? The revelation hung in the air, heavy with destiny. Force is a stat that appears when magic power and divine power are completely and perfectly fused together. In the present, Jihan stared at the result of his fusion, the secret to absolute power now in his hands. The neon lights of the city blurred into soft bokeh behind the glass, framing a memory that felt both distant and immediate. Jihan sat across from Baron, the man's face flushed with the warm haze of expensive bourbon, his guard lowered by the alcohol and the false security of being the only one at the peak. Baron's voice was thick with a pride that bordered on arrogance, the kind that came from possessing a weapon no one else could touch. Of course, it's not an easy thing, the older man slurred, swirling the amber liquid in his glass, but others would never have been able to try it. Since the only player with two classes is me, Jihan watched him, his expression carefully neutral, masking the storm of realization brewing behind his eyes. Baron believed his monopoly on power was absolute, a natural law written into the fabric of the system, but he was staring right at the anomaly that would shatter his worldview. It's a power that only I who has two status windows can monopolize, Baron declared, sitting back with a satisfied grin, completely unaware of the irony hanging in the air. That was the SSS rank gift that Baron was proud about, Jihan thought, dissecting the memory with the precision of a surgeon. Jihan leaned forward in the memory, the ghost of his past self asking the critical question. Is that really the only condition that is necessary? Baron laughed, a boisterous sound that grated against Jihan's current focus. Besides the fact that divine power needs to be at least level 10, that's right, the information was priceless, a secret key handed over in a moment of drunken camaraderie. I wonder if I, who is not an American, can find out about this top secret information, Jihan had asked, playing the role of the humble disciple. Baron merely shrugged, his eyes twinkling with the secret. Did I not mention it? The only person who is able to obtain 2 classes is me. It doesn't matter if everyone else comes to know about it. The memory faded, replaced by the stark reality of Jihan's apartment, but the truth remained. Baron had been wrong. While he was being arrogant, I could only acknowledge it as the truth, Jihan admitted to himself, feeling the weight of destiny settling on his shoulders. The overwhelming power to conquer a space force was only obtainable by Baron. The darkness of the room seemed to press in, charged with potential. But not anymore. Reality snapped back with a crackle of violet energy. Jihan stood in the center of his room, his body wreathed in wild, untamed arcs of power that hissed like live wires. The air smelled of ozone and danger. Kiek, he gritted his teeth, his body convulsing as the foreign energies fought for dominance within his veins. The pain was sharp, electric, a testament to the volatility of what he was attempting. Now I know the conditions, he realized, his eyes glowing with the reflection of the chaotic light. The energy lifted him off his feet, suspending him in a cruciform of agony and power. Yua Ea, he cried out, not in fear, but in the sheer effort of containment. And I've also obtained the qualifications to try it out for myself. He was no longer the disciple, he was the usurper. It's an ability that was able to make Baron, who was a mess at control and usage, to reach rank 1, Jihan recalled, his mind sharpening even as his body screamed. If a clumsy brawler like Baron could dominate the world with this power, what could Jihan, a master of technique, achieve? He focused, his hands trembling as he brought them together. A sphere of red, unstable energy began to form between his palms, spinning with a violent centrifugal force. It's a power I must obtain in order to prepare for the things to come, he told himself, the stakes far higher than mere ranking. Survival demanded evolution. I must do it. He closed his eyes, visualizing the internal flow of his energy. Drag out the divine power from my head to my hands, he commanded his own physiology, and send out the magic power that flows out from my heart and fuse it. The heart pounded against his ribs, a war drum beating a rhythm of destruction. So that no power can leak out from my hands, I need to put all of my focus. The sphere turned a deep, blood red, pulsing like a dying star. Sweat poured down his face, his muscles locking up under the strain. Suddenly, the chaotic spinning slowed, the color stabilizing. Jihan's eyes snapped open, a manic grin spreading across his face. I did dash, he started to celebrate, but the victory was a lie. The sphere collapsed in on itself and then exploded outward with a deafening roar. Arg! Jihan was thrown backward, slamming into the wall with enough force to crack the plaster. Smoke curled from his body as he slid to the floor, groaning in agony. Ugh! He clutched his head, the ringing in his ears drowning out the hum of the city outside. He lay there for a moment, panting, analyzing the failure while the pain was still fresh. I got it wrong, he admitted, staring at the ceiling. It's not a force that I can contain with just strength. He sat up, rubbing the back of his neck, his mind racing through the variables. I just can't seem to get the right sense of it. He looked at his hand, still trembling from the explosion. Do I have to do it after I raise my magic power a bit more? He questioned, doubt creeping in. Am I even able to fuse it all in my hand in the first place? He held up his hand, staring at the empty space where the power had been. And it's not like I can continue to store it in my hands all the time after either. A sudden realization struck him like a bolt of lightning. His eyes widened. He looked at his hand, then at his chest. Continue to store it. He stood up abruptly, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place. Let's make an assumption, he whispered, the theory forming rapidly. You can't forcibly hold on to a power you've already released. The image of the red sphere dissipating into the air played in his mind. But what if, he thought, the audacity of the idea almost terrifying, you keep that power contained within the body. He assumed a meditative stance, his breathing slowing. He visualized the map of his soul, the ancient geography of martial arts. I take the divine power that originates from the upper elixir field. He traced the energy from his mind, and fuse it with the magic power that settles in the middle elixir field. The two energies, white and purple, swirled together in his visualization, volatile and dangerous. And bring the two powers that are running rampant because they can't mix. He guided them down, past the heart, into the depths of his being, to the lower elixir field and contain it using martial power. It was a perfect formation, a closed loop designed to not waste a single bit of power. In his mind's eye, the energies compressed, tighter and tighter, held in place by the iron will of his martial arts. And if I compress them just like this, he thought, squeezing the mental trigger. The reaction was instantaneous and catastrophic. Yuwa, Jihan screamed, his head thrown back as his body became a battlefield. Red lightning erupted from his skin, tearing at his clothes, scorching the air. Attempting to integrate the 3 elixir fields, the system announced, cold and mechanical against his agony. His eyes rolled back, white light pouring from them as the fusion threatened to tear him apart from the inside out. Arg! The pain was beyond anything he had ever felt, a cellular disintegration that burned through his very soul. A bright red warning window flashed into existence, screaming danger. Warning! You have reached a stage that is beyond what a player can withstand. The text was ominous, a digital herald of death. Danger to life detected. In the room next door, the silence of the night was shattered. Yoon Seia sat at her desk, headphones on, lost in the digital world, until a sound pierced through her isolation. She froze, her eyes wide. It was a sound she never wanted to hear. Uncle, she whispered, pulling off her headphones. The screaming continued, raw and terrified. She spun around in her chair, panic seizing her heart. Screams really were coming from Uncle's room. She didn't hesitate. She bolted from her chair, sprinting into the hallway, her bare feet slapping against the floor. Uncle, is something wrong? She shouted, rushing towards the door that hid a man warring with gods inside his own body. But inside that room, Sung Jihan was already past the point of no return. The hallway thundered with the frantic rhythm of bare feet slapping against the floorboards, a desperate staccato that echoed the panic seizing Yoon Seia's heart. Uncle, is something wrong? She screamed, her voice cracking with terror as she sprinted toward the source of the agony that had shattered the night's silence. She didn't wait for permission or a response. The raw, guttural cries that had pierced the walls left no room for hesitation. At least answer me, she pleaded, her hand slamming onto the handle, throwing her weight against the door. The barrier gave way, swinging open to reveal the interior of the room, and Seia froze, her eyes widening in sheer shock as the reality of hit her. Uncle, she cried out again, her voice trembling, expecting to find a battlefield, blood, or worse. But the storm had passed, leaving only a strange, heavy stillness in its wake. The title of his existence, the martial god who regressed to level 2, hung unseen in the air, a silent testament to the burden he carried. Jihan sat on the floor, leaning back against his bed, a wet towel draped over his eyes like a blindfold against the world. A bowl of ice water sat beside him, the cubes clinking softly as they melted, the only sound in the room besides their breathing. Seia sat before him, her posture collapsing from adrenaline to confusion. You were screaming that much because of a headache? She asked, incredulity coloring her tone. Jihan, still hiding his eyes beneath the damp cloth, simply nodded. It's true, he lied, his voice raspy but calm. Seia wasn't convinced, her gaze drilling into him. Then how did it go away in just a short moment? She pressed, the logic of his excuse failing to hold up against the visceral horror of his earlier screams. Jihan lifted the towel, revealing a face that was composed, perhaps too composed. Isn't that one of the mysteries of the human body? He deflected, offering a weak, lopsided smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I'm being serious, Seia snapped, her frustration bubbling over. She reached out, her hand trembling as she touched her forehead, closing her eyes as the adrenaline crash hit her. I'm sorry, I didn't want to get mad at you, she whispered, her voice small. Jihan watched her, his smile fading into a look of concern. To be honest, I was very scared, she confessed, wiping at the tears that had begun to pool in the corners of her eyes. What if something bad happened to you as well? The words hung in the air, heavy with the trauma of their past, the fear of loss that defined their current existence. Jihan stared at her, the weight of her vulnerability crushing him more than the failed fusion ever could. I wasn't thoughtful, he realized, the guilt piercing his heart. I should have been more considerate of Seia's feelings. He looked at her, really looked at her, seeing the terrified girl beneath the brave facade. Uncle, you're really okay, right? She asked again, needing absolute confirmation. Jihan softened his expression, his gaze gentle. Yeah, he promised, his voice steady as a rock. I'm really fine. I'm sorry for making you worry. Seia sniffled, wiping her face with her sleeve, pushing back the fear with a forced brightness. Don't mind me. I'm actually fine, she declared, her voice regaining some of its usual vigor as she playfully punched his arm. It's a relief that nothing bad happened to you. She stood up, dusting herself off, masking her lingering anxiety with action. Then I'll be on my way to find the Shadow Queen again, she chirped, throwing him a cheering gesture before turning to leave. Yeah. Thanks, Jihan replied, watching her go. As the door clicked shut, his smile vanished instantly, replaced by a cold, steely resolve. I should never show her my weak side again, he swore to himself, the vow etching itself into his soul. The room returned to silence, but the system messages hovering in his vision reminded him of the dangerous gamble he had just survived. Needless to say, the combination of the 3 elixir fields ended in failure, he acknowledged, reading the blue holographic box that confirmed his shortcomings. The 3 elixir field integration has failed. I lack both experience and levels. He sat alone against the wall, the bowl of ice water mocking his ambition. But as he replayed the sensation of the energy tearing through him, he realized something crucial. Still, it wasn't a complete failure. He looked down at the towel in his hands, focusing his intent. Crimson energy, volatile and raw, began to bleed from his palms, wrapping around the fabric. Force, he whispered, watching as the towel twisted and contorted under the pressure of the energy, wringing out water as if squeezed by a giant's hand. The red aura intensified, crackling with power. I got the power that I wanted. A new system window materialized, validating his insane experiment. Divine power and magic power have been integrated and replaced by the unique stat, force. The text glowed with a promise of unprecedented potential. I failed in combining the elixir fields, Jihan analyzed, visualizing the internal map of his body where the energies had clashed. Upper elixir field divine power, middle elixir field magic power, lower elixir field martial power. The diagram showed the chaotic separation, but also the new link. But I successfully combined divine power and magic power, which allowed me to obtain force. The diagram highlighted the tenuous connection running through his core. The connection between the 3 elixir fields has been weakly maintained. Jihan sat at his desk, towel on his head, staring at his status window. He frowned, leaning closer. There's something strange about my force stats figures. He scrutinized the numbers. Martial power was 12. Magic power was 6. Divine power was 10. Yet, force was listed at 12. It's 12 from the very start, he wondered, confused by the math. Suddenly, another notification popped up, explaining the anomaly. The stats, martial power and force interact. Sharing stat points, Jihan's eyes widened in shock. They share points, he gasped, the implication staggering. Then that means if I raise just one of them. He reached out and tapped the arrow next to martial power, raising it to 14. Instantly, a second message confirmed his theory, martial power has increased by 2. Force has also increased due to the elixir fields interacting. He stared at the screen, sweat beading on his forehead as he comprehended the magnitude of this discovery. What the? He muttered, a nervous laugh escaping his lips. Isn't this completely overpowered? Having 2 primary combat stats scale off each other was a cheat code written into reality. I'm at this level with only force. He grinned, imagining the future. I wonder how much more amazing the combination of the 3 elixir fields is going to be, but wisdom tempered his greed. Still, let's forget about that for the time being, he decided, wiping his neck with the towel. If I go for another attempt at my current level, I might actually die. He had cheated death once tonight, tempting it again was foolish. I've also gotten what I wanted. Curiosity struck him then. With magic power now integrated into force, what could he do? Should I try using a mage skill? He thought, extending his hand toward the empty air. Fire, he commanded, channeling his new power. A tiny, pathetic flame flickered into existence on his fingertip, sputtering like a dying candle. You lack magic power, the system deadpanned. Jihan stared at the ember, unimpressed. The silence was deafening. How cute, he scoffed, extinguishing the flame. The moon hung high in the night sky, a silent observer to his evolution, before slowly giving way to the golden hues of dawn. The sun rose over the city skyline, bathing the skyscrapers in warm light. Jihan woke with a start, the morning sun hitting his face. Is it morning already? He groaned, sitting up in bed. A notification greeted him. Your divine power has increased to 10, followed by a restriction. From now on, you can only absorb divine power from relics that are C rank or higher. Jihan looked down at the items scattered on his bed, the D rank acupressure tool and the E rank play ball. I was hoping there was an off chance that it would keep working, but no, he sighed, rubbing his face. How petty, they were all items I bought with my points. He looked at the useless junk with disdain. I should sell what's left on the second-hand market. He walked out of his room, his bare feet padding softly on the floor. Essa, are you awake? He called out, descending the stairs. He paused, seeing her slumped on the couch in the living room. Is she sleeping? He wondered, approaching quietly. But as he got closer, she turned, revealing dark circles under her eyes that rivaled a panda's. Ah, uncle, you're up? She greeted, looking like a zombie. Ssa, why do you look like that? Don't tell me you stayed up all night, Jihan asked, concerned. Well, I just kept searching, and it was morning before I knew it. She laughed nervously, trembling from exhaustion. You don't need to go so far, Jihan chided gently. But still, take a look at this. I found something good, she pointed at her laptop screen. This is, Jihan leaned in. Other race close-ups. The video thumbnail showed a channel called Other Race Close-Up Specialist Editor, with 17,000 subscribers. Yeah, there are people with scope gifts who only take close-up shots of other races, Saea explained enthusiastically. Jihan looked at the screen with a deadpan expression. They're being voyeurs with those great gifts, he muttered, unimpressed by humanity's priorities. In any case, look at this video, Saea insisted, ignoring his judgment. It's a replay of the game you were in. She clicked play, and the screen filled with a high-definition shot of the Elven throne room. Everyone, take a look at this, the voice boomed, zooming in on the alien royalty, a clue hidden in plain sight that only a voyeur could find. The screen illuminated the room with a high-definition replay of the game, the voice booming with the excitement of a discovery hidden in plain sight. Everyone, take a look at this, the commentator urged, the camera zooming in on the opulent throne room of the elves where two figures sat in regal silence. To the right sat a high elf, bathed in light, but to the left sat a figure of dusk and shadow, a dark elf exuding an aura of cold authority. Wow, elves really are the best. Look at that flawless, smooth ski. The commentator's lecherous praise was cut short as Saea clicked the mouse, her face twisting in mild disgust. Ugh, the sound is disturbing, so I'll just turn that off, she muttered, sparing them the rest of the voyeuristic commentary. She turned to Jihan, her eyes bright with a theory that had been brewing in her mind. They both look to be high-ranked, but one is a dark elf, she pointed out, the image of the two queens frozen on the screen. Doesn't the title, Queen, somewhat fit how she looks? She leaned back, looking at the dark-skinned sovereign with a critical eye. I wonder if the term, Shadow Queen, makes dark elves a potential candidate, she mused, connecting the dots of the game's lore with a detective's intuition. She looked up at her uncle, seeking validation for her deduction. What do you think? Jihan studied the screen, the logic sound enough to warrant consideration. That makes sense. You did a good job, he praised, offering a warm smile, though his internal tactician remained cautious. It's too early to jump to conclusions. I'll look for a little bit more information, she chirped, energized by his approval. Jihan watched her, impressed not just by her research but by the presentation. You look really professional, he noted, admiring the clean cuts and zooms of the video she had prepared. Of course. I'll even edit the videos nicely for you, she offered, beaming with pride. Jihan blinked, surprised by her technical proficiency. You know how to edit videos? He asked. Saea's smile faltered for a fraction of a second, a shadow passing over her eyes. Yeah, though it's only a little bit. I made videos of Dad as a hobby. The name landed like a stone in deep water. The atmosphere in the room curdled instantly. Jihan's expression, previously open and warm, hardened into a mask of cold recognition. The realization hit him. Yoon Sae Jin. The name of the Sword King, the man who had abandoned everything, echoed in the silence. Jihan turned his gaze away from his niece, his eyes landing on a framed family portrait hanging on the wall. It was a picture of happier times, a young couple holding a baby, but the glass over the father's face was shattered, a spiderweb of cracks obscuring the man who had betrayed them. Did you really? Jihan thought, the venom in his mind seeping into his very soul as he stared at the fractured image of his brother-in-law. Leave your daughter behind like this? The question was rhetorical, the answer written in the lonely nights and the terror Saea tried so hard to hide. Pathetic bastard, he spat internally, the judgment final and absolute. Shifted in his memory, transporting him back 2 days prior to a sterile meeting room. Jihan sat across from manager Park Yoon-sik, the air thick with the weight of sensitive intelligence. I think I know who the Sword King's woman is, Jihan declared, dropping a bombshell that made the manager sit up straight. Really? Who is it? Park asked, his professional demeanor cracking under the shock. Jihan didn't hesitate. Her name is Ito Shizuru, he revealed. Park froze, the name carrying a weight he hadn't expected. The owner of the SSS rank gift, Beauty, Jihan continued, explaining the terrified looks on the faces of those who knew the truth. Beauty is predicted to exceed mind control and even be on the level of remodeling the mind, Jihan explained, the horror of the ability lying not in physical destruction but in the absolute subversion of the self. There have been similar cases in the past, Jihan reminded him, the image of prospects bowing in unison to an unseen mistress filling the narrative space. Of prospects in our country suddenly moving to Japan, the smoke of a pipe curled around a silhouette in a kimono, a visual representation of the seductive trap that had ensnared so many. If that gift happens to have no restrictions on its use. Jihan's voice dropped, the strategic nightmare becoming clear, then there's no knowing when she'll appear to take powerful individuals from us. The implication was terrifying. The Sword King hadn't just defected, he had been harvested. Back in the present, Jihan stood before the floor-to-ceiling window of his apartment, looking out over the sprawling metropolis. After that, I continuously searched for beauty and Ito Shizuru, he narrated to himself, the city moving silently below him. But I couldn't find any information. He stared at his phone, the screen blank, a testament to the information blackout. Japan is probably thoroughly managing any info on her, he deduced, realizing the enemy was as cautious as they were dangerous. There's nothing I can do at the moment, he admitted, pocketing the device. He turned away from the window, his resolve hardening. I have no choice but to heed Manager Park's warning to be careful. Let's prepare in advance, just in case. But as he walked away, the sky outside darkened with the arrival of a massive aircraft. If what he said is true, they could already be making their move. The white fuselage of a plane cut through the clouds, the red circle of the rising sun emblazoned on its wing. The text on the side read, Neo Self-Defense Force. It was a touchdown in Korea, an invasion disguised as diplomacy. The narrative jumped forward to the night of the event. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Uncle, Saiya called out, stepping out in a powder blue dress, looking every bit the elegant young woman she was growing up to be. How much longer? She asked, adjusting her bag. Jihan, looking sharp in a dark suit, checked his watch. At this rate, we'll be late, he noted, but there was no panic in his voice. All right, I'm done. Let's go, he said, buttoning his jacket as he walked toward the door. Saiya followed, but as they waited for the elevator to descend to the lobby, he noticed the tremor in her hands. Are you nervous? He asked, seeing the fear behind her wide eyes. Saiya flinched, caught in her anxiety. Don't be. There's no reason to be, he assured her, his voice a calm anchor. I'm shaking a bit because it's the first time I've made a public appearance since my dad's work. She confessed, the shadow of the Sword King still looming over her. Jihan looked at her, his expression softening. Just be confident like you were on the last broadcast, he advised, reminding her of her own strength. We've done nothing wrong, so there's no reason or need for us to act like we have. Saiya took a breath, drawing strength from his conviction. Yep. The elevator dinged, announcing their arrival at the lobby floor. The doors slid open to reveal a bustling hall, the golden light of chandeliers reflecting off the polished floors. Anyways, most of the people here, Jihan whispered to her as they stepped out, seeing Manager Park approaching them with a welcoming smile. Already know what they want to hear. The room was filled with the elite, men and women in suits and gowns, all gathered for a singular purpose. We've been waiting. Sung Jihan, Manager Park greeted, bowing slightly. We've prepared all the things you've requested, so I think we can get started straight away, he informed them, his efficiency absolute. Jihan nodded, a glint of steel in his eyes. Thank you. Then, I'll be relying on you to see this event through, he said. Flashed back briefly to the planning stage, Jihan handing a document to a stunned Manager Park. Manager Park Yun-sik, he had said, sliding the paper across the desk. I was confused at first, Park admitted in the present, looking at the banner that hung over the stage. That request you had asked of me back then. The banner read, Former Sword King Yoon Sae Jin. An auction event of their treasures and collection. An auction for the Sword King collection, Park marveled, looking at the setup. But now I think I know a bit more about your aim. The hall was set with round tables, a stage, and a display of the items left behind by the trader. Jihan looked out over the empty chairs that would soon be filled with vultures and spies. On one table, a reserve sign stood prominently, Neo Self-Defense Force. Jihan's eyes narrowed as he looked at the sign, the trap set and the bait laid. It's to lure Japan in, isn't it? Park asked, the realization dawning on him. Jihan stared at the sign, the game finally beginning. You're right, he confirmed, but that was only the beginning of his retaliation. The screen illuminated the room with the replay, but Saiya had already connected the dots. You're right, Jihan confirmed, walking beside Manager Park down the opulent hallway of the auction venue. The plan was in motion, a trap set with the most dangerous bait imaginable. The auction items were also selected to match that purpose, Jihan explained, his mind visualizing the prize, Yoon Sae Jin's personal battle connector and the treasure trove of battle data stored within it. The stored battle data of Yoon Sae Jin must be particularly eye-catching for them, Jihan reasoned, knowing the enemy's hunger for power. Japan will definitely move to retrieve it, he predicted, the image of a sleek black luxury vehicle cutting through the soul traffic filling the narrative space. Inside, powerful figures sat in silence, moving toward the bait. And depending on the scenario, Jihan's internal monologue turned darker. Considering the ultimate betrayal, the person in question may come themselves. Whether the Sword King himself showed up or just his lackeys, Jihan was ready. Whether or not Yoon Sae Jin comes or not, he resolved, the sunlight washing out the world behind him as he walked. The people will have no choice but to face reality and accept it through this opportunity. Beside him, Manager Park wiped a bead of sweat from his brow, glancing at the young man who seemed to be reading from a script only he could see. Sung Ji-han, this man. Park thought, a shiver of awe running down his spine. Even if he's a player, it's like he's looking into the future. Ji-han stopped, turning to Park with final instructions. This is the last opportunity to sway the public's opinion, he said, his voice low and urgent. Please ask the reporters to keep an eye on the new Defense Force table. But before they could enter the hall, chaos erupted at the entrance. It's Asura. Asura. Wait, a shrill voice screamed. Security guards struggled to hold back a group of desperate people. You can't enter. Please step back, the guards shouted. Asura froze, her eyes widening in horror as she recognized the faces. I just need a moment. We're Asura's family. We're related, an older man yelled, feigning desperation. Asura gasped, the color draining from her face. Aunt, uncles as well. The relatives wasted no time. Asura, are you in your right mind? The aunt shrieked, clutching her purse like a weapon. No matter how urgently you need money, an auction. What kind of things are they? She wailed, grabbing the uncle's arm. You coaxed our naive Asura into this, didn't you? The uncle accused, pointing a trembling finger at Ji-han. Ji-han closed his eyes, a sigh of pure exasperation escaping him. How dare you sell someone else's important property, you swindler, the uncle spat. Ji-han opened his eyes, a cold smirk playing on his lips. Who are you calling a swindler? He asked, his voice dripping with disdain. When you're the people who ran about using my dad's name to commit scams before getting chased out. Asura stepped forward, her shock replaced by a burning fury. There's a limit to how much you can look down on someone, she declared, facing the parasites. Do I look that lowly to you? Do you think I don't know of your ulterior motives of trying to get a share of the fortune in my father's absence? The relatives recoiled, stunned by her defiance. What? The aunt stammered. How dare you? Just look at the rudeness of this brat, she shrieked, looking around for sympathy that wasn't there. Asura stood tall, her voice cutting through their noise. The wealth that my dad left behind is all mine, she stated, claiming her birthright. And you don't have the right nor the claim to argue about that. She turned her back on them, grabbing Ji-han's arm. Please see them off. They aren't related to me, she ordered the guards. Let's go, uncle, she urged, pulling him away. Hey, don't you dare walk off. Hey, the relatives screamed impotently as the guards moved in. Entrance is forbidden. Please leave. The farce was over. As they walked toward the double doors, Ji-han smiled down at her. You were pretty cool today, he teased gently. Asura beamed, the tension melting into a bright smile. Of course, when I do something, I do it properly. Manager Park opened the doors. Ji-han, Asura, we've arrived, he announced. I'll see you in, Ji-han said, stepping into the blinding lights of the venue. The hall was packed. A massive screen displayed the event. Former Sword King Yoon Sae Jin. An auction event of their treasures and collection. They're here, a reporter shouted. It's Sung Ji-han. The flashbulbs went off like a strobe light, blinding and relentless. Quick, take pictures, the press surged forward. Sung Ji-han. What is the purpose of this auction? One shouted. You allowed overseas groups to participate in this auction. What's the reason for that? Another demanded. Yoon Sae. Look this way. The questions were a physical assault. Is it true that there was external pressure on the Sword Palace's donation and the hosting of this auction? Have you given up on the Sword King's return? What do you think about the people's view who see the Sword King's property as just a source of money? Ji-han walked through the storm, his face impassive. Sung Ji-han, please say something about your recent BattleNet results, a reporter yelled, shoving a camera too close. Ji-han stopped. He raised his hand, a crimson aura of force crackling around his fingers. With a subtle flick, he released the energy. Crack, the sound was sharp, like a bone snapping. The reporter's camera lens shattered instantly, glass raining onto the floor. What? The photographer gasped, staring at his ruined equipment. Why did my camera suddenly crack? Panic spread through the press pit. There's no power. Why is it doing this? Another cried out as their equipment died. Silence fell over the room like a heavy blanket. Ji-han lowered his hand. This is an auction event, not a press conference, he stated calmly, his voice echoing in the quiet. I'd appreciate a little more silence. Ji-han took the podium. Then, let's start the auction, he announced. He stood tall, the master of the board. There are 3 items that have been prepared for this auction, he began, gesturing to the display. A sleek, black gaming chair sat on a pedestal. Firstly, the 99% pain-reducing BattleNet connector that Yoon Sae Jin used, he introduced. This item also includes the data stored in the connector. He pointed to the small black drives next to it. In addition, the data from when Yoon Sae-jin analyzed himself, he revealed, dropping the bombshell. And the data collected from the analysis of the top players in Korea and East Asia are also included. The room buzzed with greed. The data of the Sword King is quite precious, a bidder whispered. And as the Korea-Japan match is ahead, the analysis of other players is considerably. The strategic value was incalculable. Jihan watched them, knowing exactly what they were thinking. They won't want to miss out on a single thing, he thought. Analytical data of high-end players cannot be obtained elsewhere. After all, suddenly, a hand shot up. "Excuse me," a polite voice called out. Jihan looked toward the source. It was the Japanese table. An older man with a mustache sat there, waving casually. "This is Japan's Neo Self-Defense Force affiliate," the narration confirmed. "Recruiting team manager, Takeda Kazuo. If the auction has started, is it okay to bid straight away?" Takeda asked, his tone conversational. "I will give you 5 billion yen, he declared, dropping a nuclear bid that sucked the air out of the room. For all the items of this auction, the crowd gasped. 5 billion yen. Instant victory. But Takeda wasn't done. "And," he added, his eyes shifting to Sae Sung-san, "I would like to request a private meeting with Yoon-san." Sae flinched, looking at Jihan. Jihan stepped forward, shielding her. "I can see your intentions, you bastards," he thought, seeing the trap within the offer. "I'm sorry, but that will be difficult," Jihan replied aloud, stepping off the stage and walking toward them. His footsteps were heavy in the silence. "If you have business, then state it here," he challenged, stopping right in front of Takeda. Takeda looked up, his smile never fading. "The current situation is not one where a private meeting is possible," Jihan said coldly. "Japan of all countries should know this best." Takeda chuckled, a sound that made the skin crawl. "If you stare at me so intensely, it's too scary," he teased, his eyes narrowing into slits. "I'm undoubtedly a guest who's participating in this auction, so please don't treat me so coldly," he purred, the predator finally revealing his teeth. "I'm undoubtedly a guest who's participating in this auction, so please don't treat me so coldly," Takeda purred, his mustache twitching with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The air in the auction hall grew heavy, the politeness of his words masking a razor-sharp threat. He leaned back slightly, enjoying the game, his voice dropping an octave as he delivered the warning. "If you keep pressing forward so aggressively." He paused, letting the silence stretch like a rubber band about to snap. "Someone may have to interfere." Right on cue, the space between them was severed. A figure moved with the fluidity of liquid shadow, stepping between the aggressor and the target. A woman in a sharp suit stood there, her presence sudden and absolute, blocking Jihan's path with a long, sheathed katana. She didn't draw the blade, but the barrier was clear. Her body was a wall of disciplined steel. Takeda gestured to his protector with the pride of a collector showing off a rare specimen. "My bodyguard, Shadow, that is," he introduced. The woman turned her gaze toward Jihan, her eyes burning with a golden, predatory intensity. She was no ordinary hired muscle. Jihan stopped, his senses flaring as he scanned the woman standing before him. The pressure emitting from her was dense, a suffocating aura that only high-level players could truly appreciate. "She's not on the level of the Sword King," Jihan analyzed, his mind dissecting her stance and energy flow in a split second, "but she's a great player nonetheless." The threat escalated with a single, subtle movement. The bodyguard's thumb pressed against the tsuba of her katana, the metal giving a sharp click as the blade loosened in its sheath. It was the universal sound of imminent violence, a promise that the next movement would be a draw cut faster than the eye could follow. Seeing the tension peak, Takeda waved his hand dismissively, his facade of joviality returning in an instant. "Ah, there's no ulterior meaning behind this," he lied smoothly, his voice dripping with false innocence. He watched Jihan closely, gauging his reaction to the show of force. "I'm just asking for your caution." Haha, the laughter was hollow, echoing in the tense silence between the two men. But Jihan wasn't listening to the old man anymore. His focus was entirely on the bodyguard, who remained completely silent, her expression unreadable. She stared him down, and then, something shifted. A jagged streak of blue lightning crackled from her eye, a visual manifestation of her internal energy. It wasn't just raw power, it was a specific frequency, a familiar rhythm that Jihan had felt before. The realization hit him like a physical blow, his internal monologue turning sharp with disbelief. "The hell is this?" he thought, staring into the crackling energy that shouldn't exist in a stranger. "This is like Yoon Sae-jin." The signature was unmistakable. The techniques, the aura, the very essence of her power mirrored the Sword King himself. Japan hadn't just come for the data, they had already begun to replicate it. This revelation changed everything, turning a simple auction into a battlefield of stolen legacies.